Greetings, fellow armchair Imagineers! Tiki here.
And Blue Dragon 5.
And welcome to the show where we wax poetic about the movies we see on a month-to-month basis. It's time to crack open our...
Movie
Memoirs!
Yeah.
All right, Dragon, October 2022. A lot to go over, so I'm not even going to do a pre-ramble this time. Let's just jump right into it. The news.
Death.
Okay, as we always do, we start with the literal deaths and then move downward from bad news into like, hey, we're actually genuinely stoked about this news. So, Dragon, kick us off. Let's start with the in memoriam section.
Yes, so very appropriately for once, it's the month of October, and we're kind of bridging on Day of the Dead, so let's talk about our dead.
Yeah, I don't want to joke about that, but yeah. Indeed.
Of course not. This is all terrible news.
Sure. All right. Anyways. Okay, so sorry, go ahead.
Well, good. So we lost the dear Angela Lansbury, unfortunately, of course. Very storied in both the stage, film, and television. I mean, think of it, it's like the pillars of those three already. I mean, already like three roles off the top of my head you can think of. You got Jessica Fletcher, you got Mrs. Potts, and of course her stage work just kind of ad infinitum there.
Yeah, I mean, she'll always be Mrs. Potts to me, but of course, the stage work is very prominent. Like, she was the original Mrs. Lovett in Sweeney Todd, and that's a really big role that she originated. And then, of course, yeah, like you said, Murder, She Wrote, just absolutely just seminal to a generation of people, as Saul Goodman would know.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's just, I mean, think about it. Like, she can rest in her laurels alone just with the fact that, she's essentially sang one of the most iconic Disney songs ever.
No, yeah, for sure. But that's literally like the cherry on top of her career.
Yeah. Like, and she didn't even need that teapot, man. She would have gone down in history.
Right.
Regardless, but seriously, I mean, hearing Angela Lansbury pass, that was quite the blow. Just like, it's one of those things. Now we've kind of reached the age where it's just like all of our heroes and all of our kind of our fixtures of pop culture are flickering and fading out.
Dragon, we're old. We're old. I don't know what to tell you.
But you have to put such a negative spin on it. Can't we just? It's
Dragon. We're starting in the M. Night Shyamalan movie called Old.
See, we're basically a few bars away from the Mr. Krabs' "You're Old" opening. So let's see. Of course, so we're gonna move on from the last thing. Actually, I don't know if you know this. I didn't know this myself either. But apparently, her last posthumous role coming up will be, I believe, this month. She's in the Glass Onion, the Knives Out.
Oh no, I did not know she was in that. Nice.
I didn't know how. I don't know if it's gonna be like a cameo like Joseph Gordon-Levitt or if it's actually a main role or something. So we'll see. But so she's apparently going to be in the Glass Onion.
The first movie was a big ensemble movie.
Yeah,
so I'm guessing it's going to be like that. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. Anyway, okay. So then this was the most bittersweet death. I got to admit. We have. I'm going to butcher the name here. Sachin Littlefeather.
All I know about her is just the infamous incident, but I didn't really know. I honestly don't know a ton about what she's contributed beyond that.
Well, neither do I really, but it just the main reason I wanted to bring up it might have been Sachin Littlefeather. The reason I want to bring up Littlefeather here is the fact that she was always very into Native American rights advocacy, and the problem here is that or the sad part of this, I should say, is that I believe it was last month. We didn't mention this because, again, Littlefeather's not really kind of outside the brand of it all, not really in our wheelhouse. And I forget if it was within the same month or this started last month. And then it's like this month is kind of the bittersweet.
Did you know that she's referenced in My Dinner with Andre?
Really?
Yeah, it's basically the reference is at the moment at the Oscars is like the last time that things really felt like they were unscripted in society. Like it really, like it was like the last time where things really felt unhinged, and we've been kind of living on autopilot since then.
Well, that's the thing. So
that was back in the 80s. So, anyways, I digress. That movie really ahead of its time. Go ahead.
What I'm getting at is that, like, very shortly before her death, either the month or within the same month earlier that month, she she got an apology from the Oscars, which is historic, man. She got
Hmm.
an actual apology for what happened years back about how they really basically they threatened to arrest her if she dared to read that speech.
Right, right,
It was
right.
really
Yeah.
mean, really intimidating for the Oscars to pull that sort of thing. So yeah, they kind of years later they apologized and they reached out to her and everything. So then of course very shortly after that, she then after she finally, I mean it's kind of bittersweet in the fact of like, hey, she finally got the apology and then well then she dies. But
Mhm.
again, kind of gets closure in the end. But apparently, I don't know if this was just like revealed like after her death only, but apparently she's technically not Native American, which is
Oh,
really
geez,
heady.
really? Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, she still was an advocate for the Native Americans. It was like it's very
I'm pretty sure
Kerber.
there's a rumor. I'm not sure if it's true or not. I don't remember, but the guy who the famous Native American crying at the side
Yeah,
at
that
the
guy.
trash on the
Yeah.
road, that he's not actually Native American.
So that's the thing. It's so trippy how that works. It's a very Curb Your Enthusiasm sort of thing of like, well, wait a minute, you're not Native American, no, but I stick up for the Native Americans. I'm all about
Oh God.
just the whole. I don't know if that puts you in such good stand. But still, seriously, she did a lot of good and obviously raised a lot of awareness. And you had a lot of sympathy for what Brando kind of used her for. I mean, for maybe the good of that cause, but still in the kind of upset Hollywood with more of a screw you Hollywood sort of thing.
Uh-huh.
Because I mean that did mark her for a long time. And again, unfortunately, upon her passing, we're still referring to her as, oh yeah, it's that lady from the Oscars.
Right, right, yeah.
Yeah, could be worse. She could be the streaker from the Oscars. So
All right. So Leslie Jordan Dragon. I'm not gonna lie. I looked up this guy's filmography, and the most familiar I am is Will and Grace, and even then, I don't really remember him in it. He seems like he has a very long career, but unfortunately, I just haven't seen most of what this man has done, so I
well,
don't
just
really have a
take
ton to add.
Well, just take it from me. Leslie Jordan is one of those like the kind of like an old time character actor sort here, where he's been doing character roles for a long time, and he's been working till the end. And he did like a lot of. He was even on Rosenbaum's podcast like a while back. I mean, he was in the industry, man. He kept
Uh-huh.
working and working, and he the main thing I know him, I think my favorite thing I know him from, I've seen him in bit parts. Like he did like a voice on American Dad once, and again he's been on like Call Me Cat, and he's been on a whole bunch of other like again sitcoms that usually did not last very long, or sometimes just be guest parts on shows that did last long. And the one that always stuck out to me, and I kind of it's so odd. I mentioned this a few memoirs back, I think. Boston Legal, he was on Boston Legal, and he is kind of part two of that Betty White thing I was telling you about. So, in Boston Legal, he was on for 6 episodes, playing Bernard. Now, Bernard was represented by Alan Shore, the James Spader character. And what happened is this guy killed somebody, and debatably in self-defense. But we learned he actually just kind of got into a swing of killing people
Mhm.
for these really bizarre circumstances. And Alan Shore, being a principled man, always really hated defending this guy because he didn't want to, he didn't advocate murder at all. Like he was not that kind of lawyer. He hated the fact he had to get this guy off for murder, and he hated it. So this guy he just kept happening into that. He was like this again. Leslie Jordan is not an intimidating guy. He's very kind of happy-go-lucky southern sort, and basically he got a little threatening, and he was dating Betty White in the show, and then Betty White killed him.
Oh,
and
jeez.
and then the cycle kind of went on where it's like Al and the Betty White, by the way, is real quick. In Boston Legal, the gag was Alan Shore was such a ladies' man. He kept sleeping with all the paralegals and the secretaries. So they gave him a woman who knew him when he was younger, which was Betty White,
Uh-huh.
Catherine Piper. So just anyway, so that's the main thing I know him for. And he also did a lot of good charity work for AIDS, and even the virus when it happened, started a couple of years back, the relief effort and such. So yeah, he is a man about town and did a lot of good. So
Cool.
yeah.
All right, let's see. Ted White. This guy's really, really interesting, Dragon.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't really heard his name until you threw it in there, but I'm always very interested in people who are kind of like at ground zero of fandoms, and this
Yeah.
guy definitely seems like a kind of like one of the godfathers of science fiction fandom.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was more the horror side. That's the main thing I know Ted White for. Ted White, he was he was one of the Jasons.
Oh, really? Huh. That's interesting because I looked into it. Dragon, he does. Is this the Ted White? I might be thinking of another Ted White because I
Oh,
googled the name. I'm sorry, I googled the name Ted White and it came up as like I got a science fiction writer who's like a very famous science fiction writer who like kind of like started sci-fi conventions. Dragon, I think we might be thinking of different Ted Whites.
yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure mine. Tiki, you might want to. Tiki,
Shit,
when
sorry,
you
my
looked up
bad.
your Tiki, when you looked up your Ted White, did you notice if it said he died?
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, we. I mean, I'm pretty sure mine's the dead guy, but I don't.
All
I mean,
right,
I
all
didn't think there
right.
was another one.
So he's a Jason, you say?
Well, yeah. So my point is, Ted
I'm
White.
sorry.
I
Look into this other Ted White though, because he genuinely sounds really interesting.
Well, my Ted White's nothing to sneeze at either. But the point being,
Do you know the Ted White I'm talking about?
no, I don't. That's why I'm
Okay.
really blindsided. There's another Ted White, and now it's making me doubt if my guy's dead, which I'm pretty sure
Oh
he
God.
was. Point being, Ted White, he was Jason in part 4, who, for my money, was second, obviously, to Kane Hodder, who was like the definitive Jason, who played him the most and is the best one. This guy, again, if you had to select a Jason, this guy was like, he was kind of like a journeyman kind of stunt actor. He was like he was an older man. He like terrified the crap out of Corey Feldman as a kid when he was playing Jason, and because again the kid got on his nerves and he loved scaring the crap out of him. And I don't know, it was just like he was a stuntman. He gave he was very much a fan of like, no, I don't want Jason just to lumber around and walk. I want him to run. I want him to be scary.
Uh-huh.
Which that was kind of his big claim to fame with Jason. Kane Hodder's all about the breathing and the lifelike, like the minor motions. Where this guy was like, no, just have him run and be a big, beefy, scary guy. So yeah, I mean, he always stood out to me when I watched the Friday the 13th, kind of like 7-hour documentary, and it was like, it was really. I think he was at one of the horror cons I went to once, and I don't know, it was sad to see him pass. But anyway, again, he's like to me, he's like the other Jason. So yeah.
All right. Okay, and then Loretta Lynn, Dragon. I don't have a ton to say. I just wanted to just say my piece on it, just because she is really, really iconic. I mean, this is like, short of Dolly Parton dying, it's about the most famous country music person we have. Yeah, so I've never been a big country music fan, but my grandma is. And so, suffice to say, Dragon, I heard a lot of Dolly Parton, a lot of Loretta Lynn in my childhood. Very, very familiar with her work. And of course, there's the Coal Miner's Daughter movie, which was kind of like in a lot of ways sort of Coal Miner's Daughter is honestly like the only reason I can even justify putting her on movie Memoirs, and just because that is like I think Coal Miner's Daughter, for all intents and purposes, might be like one of the blueprints for the modern biopic. And so just obviously like in the world of country music, just a big towering icon. Like for me, it just wouldn't feel right talking about passings this month and not at least bringing up her name. So not a ton to say about her. I'm not in that sort of fandom, but it is. She certainly is like probably outside of maybe Angela Lansbury, probably the most notable person who passed this month. All right.
And lastly,
yeah, Jules Bass,
yes.
half of Rankin Bass.
Yes.
So I'm actually kind of surprised that this guy was still around, to tell you the truth. But yeah, indeed, very prestigious career. Just Rankin Bass just kind of like is very much sort of just exists in that comfort zone for a lot of people, myself included. I think it's like it's not really super high quality, but it's just it's like a warm blanket.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting about Jules Bass here. Apparently, he he almost passed. I forget if it was like scarlet fever or something, but he almost passed in his youth, and he lived to 87. That's quite it's quite impressive. Ultimately, it's kind of like you hear those things sometimes with people, and like Bobby Darin, for example. Bobby Darin wasn't expected to live past 30, and of course, look at what he did. And yeah, so I mean, of course, it's like think about all the things that Jules here, was able to do. You have like all the Christmas classics. You got Frosty, you got Rudolph, you got Santa Claus Coming to Town, and The Year Without. rather storied lineup.
And then
Rather
we've also
lasting
got one of
legacy.
my personal favorites with The Hobbit.
Yeah, for sure. And you have like
Easily the best Tolkien media outside of the Peter Jackson movies, I think.
okay. But yeah, it's quite again, it's again, it was kind of surprising, Lost, because Rankin Bass is such a story name. You think lost to the ages over the years. Like, well, surely they've passed on, left us their legacy. But kind of hearing that, no, he was. He was still around. He was still hanging around. It kind of makes you feel nice that maybe he was enjoying. It's kind of like the years and years of kind of enjoyment people have been getting from his work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. So let's move on to at least not death.
Yeah, it's the death of something, but not living death.
So I still don't even know how this is happening, given that the Seuss estate is pretty infamously controlling. But what the fuck? This must be like a guerrilla movie or something. Like the Winnie the Pooh horror movie I can understand, because obviously that's a public domain thing. But this, what are we doing, Dragon? Grinch horror movie? What are we doing?
Have you seen the image that they put out for this?
Oh God, no! Hold on, I'll Google it really quick. But go ahead.
So apparently, this is slated to come out this year. In fact, December 15th.
What am I looking at? Jesus Christ!
They haven't said where it's coming out, though. They haven't said where it's going to be. They say I don't know, it's like a film festival or something or whatnot.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was just film festival. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. You have to imagine this is like a guerrilla effort of some kind. It does. I think the only reason the only way this thing's coming out is kind of like, I don't know if you heard about this. There was there's a big stir about a few months ago about this LGBTQ Joker related fan film movie, essentially.
That's the thing. This definitely has the makings of just a really high budget fan film. This feels like a fan film concept.
Well, sure. What I'm saying is, I don't know if you heard about it. So basically, DC kind of shut that down.
I did not hear about it. I heard about the Spider-Man one.
Oh, well, I didn't hear about the Spider-Man one. All I know is there was this someone was making a Joker film. They were trying to do a release in a film festival, but it got canned because Warner Brothers couldn't put the kibosh on before. This is right before Warner Brothers went downhill, obviously. Made very publicly with the whole HBO Max affair. But it was just this thing of they were doing essentially a Joker fan film, and then it was kind of pulled where it was it was when there was an ethical question of should that have been done, where it has to be the only way this is going to happen. I imagine this thing will not actually be released, but they're planning on. They're kind of getting a buzz about. Of essentially, what if the Grinch killed Cindy Lou Who's parents, and then the next year Cindy Lou Who is seeking revenge against the monster that killed their parents?
That's so fucking dumb, dude. You don't even need that. The Grinch is I'm sorry. I'm frustrated with that because I don't even really think you need the revenge angle, because I think the Grinch fucking breaking into people's houses is a creepy enough concept on its own. You don't need to just have the cliche revenge. I'm sorry, that's just frustrating. That's shit on top of shit as far as I'm concerned.
I want to be clear. That's what I read somewhere. I believe that I'm fairly certain that is the plot. That's what I read in terms of I don't think Cindy Lou is going to be a co-conspirator, but I believe she is a victim. I don't know if maybe a year is not going to go by. Maybe it's he just does it the night and then she's seeking revenge. It's going to I heard revenge seeking. I don't know if there's a year gap or not. I believe there is. Point being, none of this sounds good. I think we can agree on that. I don't think we need a Grinch horror movie in the first place.
The best thing I can throw at it is morbid curiosity.
Sure. So, yeah, it's. I mean, honestly, the idea the Grinch. Here's the thing. Very simply, again, I'm not saying we should do this, but if you're going to do a Grinch horror movie, it seems pretty straightforward. Okay, he hates Christmas, so he's going to kill everyone, so he can spend Christmas alone. Right? Pretty straightforward.
Something like that, yeah.
We're not going that route.
Slasher, yeah, right.
Basically,
right,
honestly, they're going the slasher route for this. Honestly, I think it should be less slasher. Should be more Deadpool kills the Marvel Universe. Just Doctor, the Grinch kills the Doctor, kills Doctor Seuss's verse. Kills the Seussiverse.
Oh God. But the only question is, are we going to get a horror movie version of the Cat in the Hat?
No, that's here's what we do. We don't do that. What we do is it's the Grinch Cat in the Hat Halloween crossover, only you know, always with
Only
the
the
Grinch
Cat in
being
the
murdered.
Hat is literally just James Corden's character from Cats.
Oh God! Now don't give the kids nightmares. Halloween was scary enough. Don't give the kids nightmares. It's like, what's he pulling out of a
Hey there,
hat?
Mr. Grinch, I'm here to stop you. You're being a big meanie.
What's he pulling out of the hat? It's a gun.
Oh God.
He's got a gun.
All right, all
Anyway.
right. Oh man. Okay, so Dragon, I have one question for you.
What?
You like Star Wars?
Do I?
All right, so I know Dragon. Here's the thing with Star Wars. I just think Disney is just so confused on what they want to do. Like Andor is legitimately good, but they totally buried it between the Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings shows. Like they essentially sent it out to die. I don't know. But I will say this. Lindelof has gotten a lot of shit, and he has had a bit of a mixed bag as far as his output. But Dragon Lindelof is responsible for The Leftovers, which, as you know, is one of my favorite TV shows of all time. Probably second only to Better Call Saul, if I'm being honest with you. I still hold it in very high regard. So, with that in mind, Lindelof is obviously a Leftovers fan. He's obviously a Star Wars fan. I don't know, like you could have worse people writing a Star Wars movie. Like
Well,
Lindelof is not a guy that I get excited about, but he's always a guy where if something that he does get critical praise, I'm always interested in it for sure. But it's one of those things where it's like I kind of approach Lindelof stuff with caution. It's like because he is known for kind of biting off more than he can chew writing wise. But sometimes he does really, really hit a home run, and The Leftovers is an example of that. So
I think the more recent example, Tiki, is Watchmen.
of course, sure.
So that's the thing, Tiki. So Lindelof doing Star Wars. I mean, it's a question of. I think the real question that kind of determines whether this is good news or bad news is like, hey, did J.J. Abrams is he the reason the door was open to Lindelof, or was it his work on Watchmen?
Right. I mean, I definitely think Lindelof has established a career for himself outside of Abrams. But yeah, J.J. Abrams, there's got to be something there, with the Lost connection for sure. Although, keep in mind, Dragon, J.J. Abrams didn't really have a lot to do with Lost outside of just developing the core concept and directing the pilot.
Well, I know. I'm just saying the fact that Abrams, as we saw in the Star Wars movies, he pulled a lot of his buddies into that movie and such. So perhaps that's how Lindelof kind of maybe at least got his foot in the door and says, "Hey, give my buddy before I'm out to the Warner Brothers, the sinking ship that is says Warner Brothers on this side. Here's my buddy Damon. Damon, tell him what you do." But no, it's like I like to think in the positive sense. I like to think.
Well, JJ, I'm actually going to hand it off to my buddy Carlton here. Hey, Carlton. Previously on Bates Motel.
And that's how we get Vera Farmiga in Star Wars.
Oh my God. I will always remember Damon Lindelof and Carlton Cuse always joking in the audio commentaries about like, now Carlton, that's not really your voice doing the previously on Lost, is it? Because fans say it's your voice. Anyway,
my point is, I kind of agree with the original sentiment, Tiki, in that it's like, Star Wars. Honestly, I feel like Star Wars, we should let Filoni do his thing. Filoni knows what he's doing. That's kind of like that's the really only Star Wars stories we really need right now. Don't get wrong, Andor is kind of a different. Andor is a unique animal that I don't really want to talk about until we have like the end of the first season.
I agree. Yeah,
but like not counting that, like, right now it seems to be the only thing really kind of getting with Star Wars that seems to be tracking, and of course, Boba Fett is kind of in a weird space between things. That's more, Rodriguez than it was like Filoni. So I don't know, but regardless, yeah, I know the movie. We're in a weird space in the movies because Waititi's getting the Star Wars movie, and now Lindelof's writing his, and I don't know where we're gonna end up with this sort of stuff. But I mean, again, Lindelof can do great stuff. It's just, are you familiar with his feature work?
I mean, his feature work is more kind of like in the realm of franchise stuff, honestly.
Yeah, that's the thing. So it'd be really interesting. We have kind of like a fresh, like a really passionate take from Lindelof, which I have to
I
assume if
do
he's
think
going to
that
do.
he shines more in a series format, just because in a series format he has a lot more room to like flesh out his ideas. So with that in mind, I'd honestly be more excited if he was producing a Star Wars show. I'll say
I know
that.
that's the thing. But doesn't it feel kind of interesting though that we're not just giving him a show, we're giving him a movie instead? Doesn't that feel like a little more like, huh?
It's interesting, but I don't think it plays to his strengths. Like I said.
Well, we'll see. All right.
Okay, next up, what do we got? Oh, I got it. Okay, so Goldblum Dragon, Goldblum.
Someone
He's
passed the wafers.
God, oh my God, oh, iconic. Anyways, sorry. uh, Dragon. Also, I just noticed in the notes. You know, it's the Wicked movie, right? Not Willow.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh man.
I was the will. I was the Willow. All right. Willow. All right. But no. He's going to be the wizard in the Wicked movie, the Wizard of Oz, which
Oh,
I'm actually pretty stoked by. I think it's a perfect casting choice, and I'm also stoked because everyone thought that that role was going to go to James Corden, and it's not, and I'm happy about that. No disrespect to James Corden, the man just doesn't need to be in every single Broadway adaptation. That's all I'm saying.
right.
But Dragon, what I'm stoked about with Goldblum and Wicked, he doesn't like the Wizard doesn't have a really big role in Wicked. He basically shows up at the end of the first act to essentially like be a big blow to the character who becomes the Wicked Witch of the West because she kind of looks up to the wizard, right? Like in Oz, there's kind of like a deification of the wizard. And then basically at the end of the first act, her and Glinda go to the Emerald City. The wizard reveals that there's some shady shit going down, and then Elphaba, aka the Wicked Witch of the West, that's what inspires her to sing "Let It Go 1.0," aka Defining Gravity. So yeah, this guy is basically the big plot point to get us to that big "Let It Go" song. And what I do think is good about the casting, Dragon, is I really think that this is going to be very similar to Ragnarok, where it's very much kind of like the malevolent comic relief ruler who still does kind of like rule with an iron fist in spite of definitely having a comedic side to him.
Cool.
Yep. I'm sorry, I just gave you like a total rundown of Wicked when you don't care.
Well, no, it's not that I don't care, Tig. I mean, Wicked does seem interesting to me. So, I mean, I didn't know there was a Wicked movie in development. I kind of
Yeah.
So that's it, because I thought it said, honestly, I thought it said Willow, which I know was coming, and I saw the poster look kind of Willow-esque. I don't know. It's kind of, so, yeah.
Yeah, I know you're not into musicals, but Wicked is probably one of the ones that you might actually be interested in as far as like, the prequel kind of like, oh, this is the untold story of the Wicked Witch of the West. Anyways. All right, so Dragon, we got an Invincible video game in development. I hope there's a train level.
Yes, so I gotta tell you, man, Invincible. Everyone and their mother is dying for Invincible season 2. They love the show,
I'm just looking
obviously, for
forward to
good
that
reason.
Freddie Mercury bad guy, Dragon. That's what I keep thinking
We
of.
all Tiki, we all are. I myself am looking forward to kind of the Bane level threat that is coming before that guy. That's
Okay.
the Conquest. That's the big guy I'm waiting for. That guy, when he shows, like I read through all the Invincible comics, but I promised myself I'd only do it once and never go back, so I can be surprised when they readapt it into the animated show.
Uh-huh.
So, all I recall is that my God, Conquest, when he shows up, when you have a giant guy with a gray mustache, when he shows up, run the other way. But yeah, this is that's the fact that like everyone I talk to is like there's so much love and passion for Invincible, and I think the way Amazon kind of has it right now, unfortunately, I don't know if I'm not saying it was like a lack of faith sort of things. Animation does take time, but I don't know if it was like hey, we have Invincible and we have the boys, and the boys is going to come out faster. And Invincible's like, well, we only have people who are going to respond to Invincible. And my God, Amazon not really known for like exclusively doing the animation. People are loving this thing. We got to do more of this. And now we're in a space where, again, while everyone's talking about the boys, it's kind of like Invincible's kind of stewing. So this game will hopefully be a way of kind of keeping Invincible alive a little bit while kind of keep us kind of satiated between the wait of the seasons, perhaps. Again, there's announcing it's in development. It's not coming out like next year or anything. For all I know, the show's not even coming out. But still, it's like, this is good. Like more Invincible out there is excellent. Invincible like really sold me with that animated show, and it's wonderful.
Cool. Alrighty, so let's see. We have okay. Now we're getting into the Marvel side of news, which is it's not good. It's not bad, Dragon. At this point, Marvel's just Marvel. Oh man, I've had a really rocky relationship with Marvel over the past couple months. Anyways, interesting bit of news though. While Thunderbolt Ross is officially being recast with Harrison Ford, Dragon, I love Harrison Ford. I never want Harrison Ford to go, but we were just talking about the childhood heroes thing. It's I honestly think like especially because I hear that. I can't confirm this, Dragon. I don't think this is confirmed, but I hear that Thunderbolt Ross is going to be one of the big villains in New World Order.
Well, I can tell you what I've heard something similar. I heard that the idea, at least from the blurb I saw, because I don't want to spoil it or anything, so I just kind of got like a brief blurb about what it is. Essentially, that Thunderbolt Ross, who we already established was on shaky terms with Cap after the whole the Accords debacle, and we've established in She-Hulk. I know you didn't. I know you're not quite caught up on all that or anything, but essentially we established that the Accords have been disbanded officially. So I'm assuming that Ross is not happy about that, and he's still kind of cheesed off with things. The point being, he and Sam Wilson might not get along in this movie, and that's kind of that's the importance of Ross. Apparently, that's the big role for Ross, and that he's still very anti kind of like superheroes just freewheeling and doing their thing without oversight.
So I don't mean to say I'm morbid, Dragon. I'm just like William Hurt just died, and it's like how morbid would it be if we had to recast a role twice because the actors. I don't know.
I think taking the best way to put it is that it seems like a very odd choice that we're going to recast Thunderbolt Ross with an older actor.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Because Harrison Ford is older than William Hurt. So that seems rather odd. Now, of course, the other thing too that really perplexes me. I'm not necessarily poo-pooing Harrison Ford, but it just seems like a really weird choice. But besides that, it's the fact that Harrison Ford is aside from Indiana Jones, he doesn't really seem kind of like eager about franchise things.
No, exactly. That's another thing for sure.
Before I heard that Captain America thing that you heard, Tiki, my thought process was, okay, well, logically, what we're probably going to do with him, the only reason I could see him agreeing to this outside of like truckloads of money is Harrison Ford's probably again there's kind of there's like a little joke, and you can't really tell how much this is like actual kind of predilections for the future with the Hulk in the MCU. But in She-Hulk, we did there's a brief Red Hulk joke, and a lot of people now it is speculated, and we've been speculating this ever since Black Widow. That Black Widow, we mentioned that, and again, this is kind of tragic ultimately, but that Ross he had heart attacks in the MCU, and the theory was that he might use like kind of gamma radiated blood perhaps to kind of cure himself of this and maybe do away with his heart problems, and that would give us a practical reason for him to become Red Hulk. Now, again, that seems like if you're going to go so much trouble to bring back Thunderbolt Ross, you'd imagine we'd have a pretty good reason to do it. And if Harrison Ford's going to say yes, you'd think, okay, perhaps the majority of his role will be one movie as Ross, and the large majority being a voice as Red Hulk.
Right.
So that's the question. Now, again, it sounds like he might have a meaty role if he's going up against Sam Wilson, but by the same token, though, I don't know. It seems like if they're gonna bring him on for like a franchising commitment, it seems like we got to do Red Hulk by that logic. I don't know. So Red Hulk might have been an offhanded joke. It might have been actual call like, yeah, we're gonna do Red Hulk at some point. I don't know.
We'll see.
So it's a question of like, that's the thing. I don't. That's the only way I could see Harrison Ford really committing for this role. Of like, plus he already has a sound alike for Star Wars, so I'm sure Keith Ferguson would probably step in if anything would happen.
Weird. It just feels unnecessary, honestly.
Yeah, it's weird, but you just have to imagine like, okay, we need Ross for a really good reason, one way or another. So we got to put him in this movie, and we got to get a good actor, I guess.
Harrison Ford is going to be starring in a Yellowstone spinoff. I haven't watched Yellowstone either, but I know it's like super popular.
Yeah,
So,
Yellowstone is really popular from what I hear. Yes.
that proves that Harrison Ford is definitely like the man still wants to work. It's not like he's looking to retire.
I mean, he
So
did the CG dog movie, so why not?
exactly right.
You know, I'm saying if he's going to do a CG dog movie, why can't he be in the MCU? Anyway.
All right.
Okay, let's see. So, moving on from that. Okay, so here's some of our other MCU news. Okay, this one's rather exciting though. Just kind of continuing on the Werewolf by Night track, Tiki. The fact that Marvel's leaning into the specials and
I
one
am
special.
down. I'm totally down for the specials thing, Dragon. I really think that is
It's exactly what they need right now.
it could be a really good course correction for them for sure. I'm totally on board with it.
I mean, in theory, now again, we have to see how Armor Wars turns out ultimately, but it seems like we're making moves and like
I'm
it looks
worried
like
about Riri Williams in Black Panther. By the way, I'm getting worried. I'm getting really worried.
Well, I mean, I think worst case is going to be very set up. I mean, worst case.
My fear is that she's basically going to be like the America Chavez of Wakanda Forever, and basically be like the big plot device of the movie that we don't actually care about.
Honestly,
That's my
I think
fear.
if I'm a betting man, I think Riri Williams is going to be kind of our like our way of catching up to what's going on in the Marvel universe with Wakanda. I think she's going to be like, again, because remember, Black Panther ended with we've opened the borders and now we're crossing over, and
Right.
she would be like the American exchange student essentially.
Uh-huh.
So that would probably be our way of like, okay, and here's what's happening in Wakanda. Of course, we lost T'Challa, yada yada, and yeah. So, anyway, yeah. So what I'm getting here, so that's the thing. We have to see how Armor Wars turns out, but ultimately, it seems like we're looking at our projects and maybe second guessing things in a good way. Like, okay, do we need Armor Wars to be a series? Well, no. Let's boost it up to a film. And like, okay, do we need all of these extra series and commitments? Like, no. We just need a really good hour as a proof of concept. Now we can put him in movies, perhaps, and maybe his own movie for all we know. So let's do that with Nova. Nova, of course, was a really popular character. I myself don't know anything about the character. All that he's basically Nova. All we know about
That's
Nova,
rare.
well, what I'm getting at, Teague, is I know about Nova. We've kind of seen represented in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Right. Sure.
That's the thing. Nova, like the shorthand for Nova that
Basically,
I know,
it's like the space police, essentially.
Green Lanterns. Teague. They're
Uh-huh.
Green Lanterns. Only the helmet was the ring, and we changed that up in the Guardians of the Galaxy. But I'm assuming Nova might be the more traditional version versus what we saw in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. Because remember, we killed everyone on Xandar, so he might be the last surviving.
I forgot about that, man. John C. Reilly is fucking dead, yo.
Well,
that's depressing to think about.
That's the thing. It sounded like they
didn't even
out.
bring him back in Guardians 2, Dragon.
Yeah. It is a question. It is a question, though, of did Thanos kill half the population of Xandar or wipe out the whole planet to get the stone? That's the question. Right. Because remember, he did do that thing we saw with that Gamora flashback where he would just kind of kill half the population of the planet so they would come. It's unclear. Regardless, Xandar's numbers depleted. This guy's going to have a chip on his shoulder for sure. And perhaps we upgrade him by making him the traditional kind of Nova agent, which has a little more legs than just the average space cop. But I don't know. We'll see how they progress. The point being, Nova's got a fan base, and again, could be like a Green Lantern in the Marvel universe done a little better than what we did with Captain Marvel. So that could be rather interesting. He's kind of in the invincible space, one could say, because he's a young guy usually, and he's just kind of like thrusted upon him. It could be very interesting.
Okay.
All right. So then, okay, let's. And also, the rumor is we're doing a Silver Surfer special instead of a Silver Surfer movie. So that could be rather interesting as well.
Oh, I'd be totally down for a Silver Surfer special.
Now that's completely speculative at this point, though. We don't even have.
I've actually heard. I heard a rumbling from the Campia crowd, the Campia source, that apparently the Silver Surfer thing is being fast tracked like before Fantastic Four.
Well, I mean, it is possible because he doesn't need the Fantastic Four if you want to build them up. So technically, you could just have like a really good hour-long character study on this. Like,
it could be that they're still like building Fantastic Four. And that maybe Fantastic Four is going to come late into Phase 5, and Silver Surfer would be another solid stepping stone into them.
There is one thing though with the Silver Surfer. What they should do, the boldest thing they'd do if they did a Silver Surfer thing before the Fantastic Four is we'd have to establish Galactus if you're going to do the origin of the Silver Surfer. So it's a question of do we do the origin and have Galactus like I think naturally we should, or do we just have an adventure with the Silver Surfer kind of like we do Werewolf by Night?
I think you got to do Galactus.
That's the thing. That's a huge thing you have to establish. That special is going to get all the traction, man, because you do Silver Surfer package deal.
Or what they could do hypothetically though is it could be like a standalone adventure with like flashbacks to Galactus.
I mean, I'm down for that too, man. That's what I'm saying. Regardless, I'm saying we have to say, okay, are we doing the big man? Are we doing the stupid cloud? What are we doing?
Well, we got to have the fucking big man, Dragon.
I know, but unfortunately, Eternals ticks me off.
I'm a big man, Silver Surfer. A big, big man.
He's a really, really big man. No, what I mean is just the fact that it ticks me off with Eternals that we used our
Dwayne The Rock Johnson is Galactus.
That's not funny, man. Don't put that out there. Someone's gonna listen to that. That's not.
I'm not calling the man fat. I'm just calling him large. The man's obviously not fat.
I didn't say fat. I mean, I don't want The Rock playing Galactus. Don't throw that out there.
Okay. Oh,
God. Regardless,
Dragon. I think if The Rock's going to be in the MCU, they're gonna give him a role other than Galactus. I can't see them giving him Galactus.
Regardless, we actually have seen The Rock fat, technically.
Yeah, we have.
Okay, what was I getting? Oh, right. So, my point, Tiki, is sorry, I'm just trying to. Oh, right. It always takes me off in Eternals that we used our big man card, essentially. Like, look,
right. Yeah,
there's a giant celestial approaching our planet. Like, no,
it's going to have absolutely no impact on the continuity whatsoever. Nobody is going to address it ever again.
Which now means, like, when Galactus shows up, what are we going to do? He's a bigger man.
I'm a big man. I'm a bigger man, Sponge. A bigger man.
So it's just gonna be really. Thanks, Eternals. We had one thing to accomplish. Big guy with things coming out of his head. And what do? Giant celestial with things coming out of its head.
Yep.
Anyway,
all right.
We have honey. It's Honeybee.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Ellie B is saying, "Are you guys talking about The Rock?" Not directly. I just threw out a joke of The Rock playing Galactus because he's a big man.
Well, we will be talking about The Rock later, though. So
we will be talking about Black Adam soon.
Yes. All right. Let's see. Okay. But exciting news, man. We were hoping for this. Vision Quest has been announced. We're going to get our White Vision show.
Yeah. I'm optimistic about it. I honestly think this might be better served as a one-off because I'm not really all that familiar with the White Vision stuff, but we'll see how it goes. I'm not Dragon, let's just say with any Marvel TV stuff nowadays, I'm pretty much like, I don't know. I'm pretty burned by Marvel TV right now. So any series I'm kind of like approaching with caution. So if this was a one-off, I'd be more excited about it. But, like Paul Bettany as a Vision is always very good. And so we'll have to see. I'll certainly watch.
And that's the thing. If WandaVision was quite good, and it's the fact of like, hey, there's the big hanging.
Do we know if it's being done by the same people who did WandaVision?
That I don't know. That I didn't. I don't know if they've revealed that or not. Because if
this was essentially like WandaVision season 2, then I'd be a little bit more into it. Like I know they're not going to have Wanda in it.
They've teased that they can't say officially. They said she might show up, but they can't say one way or another. But it's interesting. I think we have 2 spin-offs from WandaVision with this and with Agatha. So. And again, we've had like 3 continuations of WandaVision, including Doctor Strange too. So by that logic, I don't know this. Plus, in the comics, there was like a whole story of like Vision going from White Vision coming back, to the way he was. I mean, there is precedent for this one compared to the other stuff. So I'm excited for the White Vision thing. Plus, it's kind of funny that we did that whole pitch for White Vision Christmas. So,
all right. Yeah, that is true. Koski Productions says White Vision show is just going to be Vision hosting a barbecue. That's what separates him from regular Vision. He likes steak. You're. I know you're joking about the barbecue thing, but I know that White Vision or the one thing I am familiar with Vision Dragon is the comic story Visions, I believe it's called, or The Visions, where it's the suburban family of Visions.
Yeah, again, that's what the basis of WandaVision was, with the whole like 50s kind of family setting. The idea of so that's
Oh, okay. So it's like, so I don't know. Like, I'd be interested in seeing because I was very compelled by the Ultron and Vision stuff in Age of Ultron, and
yeah,
that's one of the reasons why we were all pissed off that Ultron never showed up.
yeah, me too.
I like the idea of Vision interacting with different versions of himself, though. If they were to somehow incorporate that,
Yeah, so that was
I
Tom
don't
King's
know.
story, just called Vision, by the way. But the family was called the Visions. That's what the family was called. But yeah, so that's the
The
whole thing
Visions.
where the idea is like after Wanda broke up with him, he basically he built a family of his own, and then we saw how
Uh,
that went. And basically the wife essentially had had kind of a large part of her personality be Wanda. So that was kind of anyway.
right. Okay.
Okay, so let's see. Then we have so this is very recent. We have Yal Abdul Mateen, Black Manta from the Black Manta from the
Yes.
Aquaman films, as well as Doctor Manhattan in the Watchmen show.
Trial of
He's
Chicago 7 as well.
as well, yes, as Bobby Seale in that. He is playing, so they've officially announced, like, we are definitely recasting Wonder Man. No Nathan Fillion, as much as it breaks my heart. But it was the deleted scene, so it was never made the cut. So, I mean, it's what it is. He's playing Wonder Man. He's assumedly playing the title role in the Wonder Man show.
Yeah, this I'm pretty damn. I mean, he's a great actor. Don't get me wrong, but just the concept of Wonder Man, I'm pretty damn apathetic about. And I would be more into it if it was Nathan Fillion. So
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
I mean, look, the only thing
this definitely seems like a show that I'm probably gonna skip unless it gets really good hype.
Well, I mean, look, the only thing to really, the only interesting thing to really highlight at this juncture before we really know anything is that Wonder Man does have crossover with Vision in the comics. Again, this is like Wonder Man, Simon Williams, all that, and the Grim Reaper, all of that was kind of like what people were speculating during WandaVision.
Dragon,
So
I'm just really sick of this trend of like bringing in all like She-Hulk deserved a show based on her comic legacy.
Yeah.
Moon Knight deserved a show based on how dense and how much of a fan favorite that character is. But like I don't like the idea of bringing in like let's give Agatha a show. It's like Agatha's a great character,
yeah,
but like
that's a fair point with Agatha, yeah.
But it's like, but it's like, what are we gonna do with her? Like, she's a great character because of how she was written within WandaVision. Like, what are we gonna do? So I don't know, Dragon. I worry about like again, if it was an off shot, if it was like a one off, I'd say like I'm gonna watch every Marvel one off. I'll say that much, because it's only an hour's worth of time. But as far as TV shows, Dragon, as you know, I'm to the point of picking and choosing what I spend my time on. So I will
say this. Let me say this about Wonder Man, though. Now, mind you, I'm not an expert on the character. The interpretation I know of Wonder Man is from the animated show Earth's Mightiest Heroes, and that Wonder Man had a really compelling story. So I don't know how full on they can adapt that here, because again, it went kind of a different direction visually with Wonder Man. But if they did that, casting this actor in that story, that would be amazing, man. So we'll see.
Sure.
Wonder Man definitely has more legs than Agatha. I'll say that much.
I believe that. I definitely believe that.
All right, we got some DC.
I'm way more interested in going to Oogie Boogie Bash to interact with the Agatha meet and greet than I am for an Agatha show. But Koski Productions, I have heard of Terrifier 2. I very much, it's definitely been a buzz in the horror community. I definitely would have seen it if it was playing at my theater. It was playing a couple towns over. I just didn't get the chance to. But I will for sure be seeking it out when it comes to streaming. I'm looking forward to it. Anyways, okay. So let's just round stuff up with some DC news. So Henry Cavill is making a remake of Superman Returns. I'm just kidding. What?
Cavill Superman does return. One could say he's finally coming back. We're letting the boy come home again. He can He can play Superman again. He's been dying to
I
do
do
it.
think it's funny that he gave a royal fuck you to Netflix in order to make this happen.
Yes, and do you know what happened with that? What's the deal?
Yeah, he basically like walked out of the contract.
So he's not going to be in The Witcher anymore.
No, he's replaced with Liam Hemsworth.
Okay, so that I heard he was added to the show. I didn't know he was literally replacing his character.
Yeah.
So that's what. Wow.
Yeah,
that is, man. That's
it's honestly kind of unprecedented.
That's I mean, that is Philly Comics. Like, he's definitely playing Superman. We know that much. I mean,
right, yeah.
Doesn't stand in his way. But yeah, so seriously, he's coming back. The word on the street is they're doing a Man of Steel 2. Like, they might just be calling it Man of Steel 2, but I don't know if it's a working title or what. But they're giving him a Superman movie, and he'll be around.
Dragon, I want a goddamn Superman movie that's just called The Caped Crusader.
Well, no, that's Batman, Tiki.
Oh my god, you're right.
You think you're thinking like Man of Tomorrow, which is kind of an animated movie,
so. That is what I'm thinking of. I want a Batman movie called The Caped Crusader.
Thankfully we have we do have an animated Adam West movie called Return of the Caped Crusader, so that's the closest we're going to get right now. But you're right, Caped Crusader is a great name.
Anyways,
regardless, point being though, we're getting a Superman movie. It's probably going to be kind of like a fresh, kind of like the Suicide Squad movies, where you have one in the DCU, and this one's going to be kind of more of the kind of a loosey goosey, like, yeah, it's kind of there, but we're just kind of ignore all the dark and dour parts that Zack Snyder threw at us. We're just going to do a fun one.
He wants a Superman movie that's just a Batman. Yeah, Kofsky, that was stupid on my end.
Tiki just wants to adapt bullet points. That's what he wants to adapt.
No, I just want to adapt.
Not bullet points, speeding bullets.
Robin. I want to adapt All-Star Batman and Robin, but it's only the stuff about Crazy Steve being all moody about Superman.
You never heard about the story Speeding Bullets, did you?
No.
It's basically they kind of swapped the Batman Superman origins. They kind of combined them. So it's like, what if? Anyway, I don't want to bore you with that right now.
I think I've heard. It sounds familiar. You probably told me about it.
Yeah. They said they kind of combined the characters for like a what if kind of Elseworld story. Mm-hmm. Anyway, what was I? Oh, right. So, but the point being, so he's back, and that's great. And he's assumingly will be able to play kind of the brighter Superman he's always wanted to play, which I think is rewarding him for doing a great job.
I believe the wording he said was terrifically joyful.
Yeah.
Which is, I got to admit, Dragon, that does make me optimistic, because we know that Cavill can crush like legitimately optimistic Superman. Like that is when he is at his best. And that was the frustrating thing with the Zack Snyder movies, that it did not let him do that until the end. So I like the man can crush it as like that kind of like classic, like symbol of hope and optimism. So if we get the right writers on board, we'll see. Yeah.
All right. Okay. So beyond that, so here's the huge news we got to talk about. So,
James, hold on. Kosky says Tiki wants a Superman live action movie adaptation of that episode of the animated series where Batman went missing.
Nighttime. He wants to do nighttime. Honestly, I would love that as a short film, wouldn't you? Would you want to see Superman?
It does sound like an interesting concept.
God. She's like, oh man, Bruce asked me to fill in. I gotta do something.
But yeah, big news. James Gunn is essentially the Kevin Feige of DC.
Well, it's him and Peter Safran. I think he's been in the background during some of this. So the fact is that
I feel bad for Peter Safran because his name is totally going to get lost in the shuffle, and you know it. But
because I've heard Safran's name, but I think he's been a producer on some of the animated stuff. I think I could be wrong, but I've seen his name before somewhere. I just can't play. Point being, so he and James Gunn are running the ship on apparently they're rebranding.
I think it's DC. Really interesting that James Gunn is going to come back to Marvel for Guardians 3 and then like become the big competition. I that's really interesting.
That is really heady when you think about it.
It almost makes me like, I know he's not going to do it, Dragon. I know he's not going to do it, but it almost makes me worry, like just a little bit, like, what if we don't need to make Guardians 3 great. We'll make it decent, but we don't need to make it great.
The good news is Guardians is already in the can, so there's no worries.
That's true.
Yeah, so Guardians still made under the old regime, so this really affects nothing. It's all been made.
Oh God, Kosky says Zack Snyder fanboys will be very upset that Superman will act like Superman.
It's like this. Say what you will about the 2017 Justice League, but the one thing you can't take away from that movie unfortunately, is when Cavill shows up in the third act, he ain't wearing a black suit, kids. He's showing up and he's being a happy-go-lucky Superman. Best
Totally.
part of that movie. It's the only good part of that movie.
I mean, it's that, and I'm still legitimately pissed. Although, granted, this involves fucking Ezra Miller, so it's like it's a bit icky.
It's like the only two good parts of that movie. It's the whole save one person.
Yeah, the save one person thing is probably the best Ben Affleck Batman moment we ever got, I think.
Yep.
Anyways.
Okay, let's see. Where was I going? All right. So we're calling it DC Studios right now. It's but they're rebranding by calling this thing. Yes, basically they're in charge of all the media. So in regards of the movies, the television, the animation. So they're overseeing it all. And think about what we have so far that is kind of in line with kind of this kind of I'm not saying James Gunn did this in advance. I'm just saying right now it seems like DC's been kind of positioning themselves to put James Gunn in charge of things with things that feel like we're in good shape right now. Because you have Peacemaker, which obviously is a James Gunn show. Mm-hmm. You have Harley Quinn, which James Gunn showed up in, by the way, for the third season. You got Blue Beetle, which has not been like canceled or taken off the docket yet, thankfully, and hopefully will not be the case. Again, we're kind of the best case scenario is what's going to happen here, Tiki, is that with James Gunn, we're going to lean into the biggest strength that has been untapped for years with DC, which is we have a very broad range of different and diverse and interesting characters that we can do things on, because we've always been limited to Batman, Superman, and very occasionally and usually unsuccessfully Green Lantern. So we could finally turn that around and kind of lean into the weird side of DC, as we saw a taste of what James Gunn did with the Suicide Squad movie. So this is it is a really good omen, putting him in charge of things. I'm thinking less like, oh, it's going to be raunchy and edgy. No, I think it's just going to be leaning into like the eclectic flavors of the DC universe, which is a really good idea. And also with the projects that
James
are still
not like, I mean, he can be raunchy and edgy, but that shouldn't be like the main thing that people take away from his style, though.
That's the thing. I think people, ultimately, the real question with this James Gunn thing is like, are we going to be able to be in a sense where like the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie, it was a blend of James Gunn kind of playing in the framework, but it was kind of this perfect marriage of like, it's James Gunn's style, but it's a little reined in and kind of leads to like all the heart of James Gunn is kind of flourishing to the piece really nicely. And then you have the second, which is pure James Gunn, which is also really good, but still it's a little, we have a few excesses. We could trim the fat in a few places, but otherwise it's great. Mm-hmm. Regardless, it's the fact that we have all these things that so far seem to be what DC should have been from the beginning, where these are things that are kind of disconnected. Like there's kind of a loose continuity where they have like the Batman, you have the Joker movie, and you have all the Peacemaker. So things are kind of existing without having to necessarily be like the whole extended cinematic universe. Like we're just doing DC.
It doesn't fucking need to be.
Yeah. So we're doing what we should have been doing the whole time with DC, and it seems like James Gunn might be the guy to kind of like keep that going, which is the only way we're going to salvage things right now with the crisis going on at HBO Max. All right. So also briefly, I wasn't able to add it to the news, but this is kind of, you're going to think I should have put this in the bad news section, but ultimately it's kind of good news. Stargirl, it's ending. I don't know if necessarily canceled is the right word here. Stargirl is ending its season 3, which the third season has been good. We're finally ending a CW show before it gets beaten like a dead horse.
Monumental.
So it sounds like they know it's going to end, so at least they'll have hopefully an ending without a cliffhanger. So that's yeah.
Right. Okay, trailers, Dragon. We need to crack through these, man, because this has been a lot of. I know we had a lot of news to get to, but we really need to get to the movies. So, all right. So, Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special. Dragon. The one thing I'm bitter about with this is that it came out one day after the Ant-Man trailer. We already did the trailer reaction to Ant-Man, and I think this probably would have been the better trailer to actually do a podcast on. So I'm a little bitter about the timing, but it looks great. It looks great, though.
I thought we had fun on Ant-Man.
No, we did. It was a fun podcast. It was. You're right.
But so this Guardians Holiday Special looks fantastic. We're bringing the Guardians to Earth, which is a big moment. But actually having them stay there for a change. Aside from only Rocket's the only one's been on Earth the longest time, technically, which is tricky. So what's the weirdest those cheeky thing about this for us?
What?
This? Well, I'm not trying to self-congratulatory or anything here, but
no, you're right. I know what you're gonna say. You're
absolutely feels like something we would pitch for a Guardians of the I know we already pitched a Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special, but this feels like something better than what we would pitch, but still something we would pitch. Like we
It
would,
feels like it's in our wheelhouse a little bit.
I
Yeah.
would absolutely pitch Star-Lord, in between not seeking out Gamora but feeling the loss, and that when they're trying to cheer him up. That is our
like
pitch.
that. It seems like we're not just going with the easy out of like, oh, we have the end game version of Gamora. We'll just swap her out, Rick and Morty style.
Yeah, well, I mean that might be what the third one is. We don't know yet, but yeah, at least for this, we're still kind of. But that's the thing. You and I like to play between the cuts when we do our pitches. So this feels like absolutely, oh god, we're playing between the cuts of the movie, so we can't have Gamora in there. So Star-Lord's going to be sad about that logically, and the Guardians are going to cheer him up. That's our pitch, 100%. I love that.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, have we known we know then?
Okay, so let's see. Koski says, for better or for worse, Marvel just has the cinematic universe thing covered. DC should just be more focused on cinematic universe light with more focus on standalones.
Exactly.
I think what DC should do is I think they should actually lean into the not multiverse, but kind of like the
Elseworlds.
Yeah, Elseworlds. Thank you. I think if they kind of leaned into the Elseworlds direction with their continuity, I think that would be really smart of them.
See, in a perfect world, they would have done Elseworlds from the start, and then you'd have Crisis, which blends together all the Elseworlds, and you would have the ultimate showdown of Secret Wars versus Infinite Crisis. That would have been like the ultimate. Which ticket are you gonna buy? What ticket are you gonna buy first? Crisis on Infinite Earths? Or Secret Wars.
Right, yeah.
The crossover events for these franchise. Oh my god, wouldn't that be amazing? But instead we did on the small screen too. Very mixed results. Okay, so Violent Night.
Well, really quick, Koski says, imagine a scene where Rocket has to explain Earth to Peter.
Oh god.
I'm going to be honest. Koski says, I'm going to be honest. The special presentations are the most interesting MCU things in a long time. I totally agree, Koski. I really think they could be a game changer moving forward. I think that the shows were definitely a misfire. Not even necessarily the execution of the shows for the most part. I just think the timing of them. We just got way too many of them all at once. It was just total fatigue.
Imagine if you can go back in time and say, okay, guys, you're not going to believe this. Okay, the guy who scored Up is going to redefine the MCU in somewhat of a creative crisis with it.
Oh, God. All right, anyways. So, yes, Violent Night, I'm actually pretty stoked for this.
Yeah, right? David Harbour's Santa Claus. That's great.
What I love about this is that it totally, I love that it maintains some Christmassy cheer while still being kind of like the pitch of John Wick Santa Claus, essentially.
Yeah, it's kind of it's the old Hollywood adage. It's Die Hard with Santa Claus meets nobody in a sense. There's a lot of nobody in this. At least I'd like to think best case scenario because I love nobody.
Well, I mean, to be fair, nobody was basically like the everyman John Wick.
I know. I'm just saying, literally, the producers of both of those movies is working on.
Yeah.
Regardless, the point being is the fact is
I'm just saying, I feel like John Wick has almost kind of become a subgenre.
Yeah, I guess. But regardless, the fact of the matter is, this looks great, and David Harbour's really well cast, and it could be kind of an unconventional fun time.
Indeed.
Right. Honestly, it looks like it could be the better Fat Man. Not that Fat Man was bad at all, though. Fat Man was kind of an undersold movie, but
well, here's the thing about. I feel like Fat Man wasn't even necessarily the movie that was sold to us, though. I feel like
no, you're right, it wasn't.
I feel like it had more, it was trying to be more ambitious than kind of just the big camp fest that they tried to advertise it as.
Yeah, which I really respect that for, honestly. So. Yeah, this is kind of more maybe the opposite. Well, we are going to get what we're kind of sold in the trailer.
Right.
All right. I got to be honest. I'm a sucker for, as Koski is saying, action hero Santa Claus. I've always wanted to see action hero Santa Claus. This is kind of a wish fulfillment thing for me, if I'm being frank. Anyway, so Creed 3.
Yeah, I still need to catch up on Creed 2, but this definitely looks good.
You never saw Creed 2?
What?
You never saw Creed 2?
I never saw Creed 2, no.
Okay. Yeah.
I I don't know. It looks pretty compelling with a family drama and all that. That looks like a pretty. It's a well edited trailer. I do think it may be like I hope that in the movie the whole uh his brother kind of becoming the villain isn't played as a twist, because if it is, then the trailer obviously gives that away. But
I
I
mean,
like the whole idea of Apollo Creed trying to ugh,
rehabilitate.
rehabilitate someone who doesn't want to be rehabilitated. I like that idea. I think that's a really interesting, like, kind of like struggle.
It, you know, in a weird way, it feels like it's in parallel to Rocky 3 in terms of, Donnie's getting comfortable like Rocky did, and then we're kind of giving
Uh-huh.
him like a reality check of sorts. Only we're using the black experience as the reality check versus the boxing world. So that's interesting. It's also got a little blend of Rocky 5 in terms of like the street level kind of story in that regard. So hence the whole, the brother angle. So that's interesting. But I got to be honest, this is not a movie, and it feels weird because I don't want to just say just because Rocky's not in the movie, because I mean I think it's just kind of a vibe I'm getting from the movie that I would like to see this, but I don't know if I'm compelled to see it in theaters. I just don't.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
Yeah. So that's where I'm at on. Anyway,
Okay, and
brings us
finally, oh my god, that was a long news section. Okay.
yes.
October 2022 movies. We've done it. We've reached the promised land. All right.
That's the milk and honey.
Okay, so Wendell and Wild. Yeah, this is damn solid, man. And it honestly really pisses me off that Netflix is not doing more to push this thing.
I mean, they had advertised this for a while. Which is honestly, I think the mistake was they made it sound like it was a 40-minute movie instead of like an hour, like a full feature length movie.
Right. Yeah. I will say I definitely think, as far as like the plot goes, I think this plot is ambitious with the the social commentary on the prison, on the industrialization of this prison system and all that stuff. It's ambitious. I do think it kind of, I think some of the plot stuff does fall under the weight of its own ambition. Um, I definitely think it's a step down from Coraline Nightmare Before Christmas. That's like just an iconic 1-2 punch. I don't think this movie is going to be iconic in that same way, but it is damn good, man. It is damn good. I mean, the animation, like, this is like, I feel like the stop motion. I'm so glad stop motion is like more in vogue right now than at least 2D, because it's such a beautiful art form, man. I'm so glad to see it evolving. I think the big thing with this movie is the characters. I've heard people say the main character is unlikable. I don't necessarily just agree. I think she's obviously punk, but she's very empathetic though. But I think all the side characters are really, really, like, I think Raul might be one of the best trans characters I've ever seen in media, just because, like, being trans is part of their identity, but it's not like it's their entire identity. It's just who they are, but the movie doesn't make a big deal out of it. Uh yeah, I really, really like the characters in this. I think Wendell, the title characters are really fun. I almost wish we had a little bit more of them. Uh yeah, just overall very strong, just not quite as iconic as something like Coraline.
Yeah. So yeah, I thought yeah, I was pleasantly surprised to find this is actually a feature. I just wish I knew about it a little earlier. But that might be more on me than it was
I also
Netflix.
think it was weird that they waited until so late in the month to put this out.
Yeah, like waited
I
till
think
like
if they would
literally
have
like
put this out in like early October, this could have been a really big hit.
I think so as well. I think honestly, I think we're sympathetic on a lot of this. Ultimately, it's very much here. I love the pathos, and I love like the loss of Kat's parents and how like we visualize her feelings on this later in the movie. I think
There's a lot
I
of shades of Onward, I think.
yeah. So in that regards, I love the emotional core of the film, and I love like the direct like story that we are telling with this girl's arc. I love that. We had a great cast, obviously Key and Peele, which is great, and having them reunite. I love the animation on their characters; it's a lot of fun. Of course, we have like James Hong, Ving Rhames, and Angela Bassett. Those are three phenomenal actors we have in this. But here's here's the thing: I think I don't think it's as good as Coraline. Yes, I don't think it's as iconic or as kind of the slam dunk that Coraline is. But I think it's just for me visually, this film is very strong, but I feel the plot is just not as strong. Where
Yeah.
it's like for example, the exposition on the Hell Maiden thing and the world building.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
think it's a little lost here with the whole. Honestly, I'm not sure how much of the social relevancy is something, how much of it just fits naturally just given where we are now, or how much of it is like how much of it fits naturally into the story versus how much of it is just like this is the new sandbox we have to play in anytime we do an animated movie set in somewhat of a modern world. We have to update things. So a lot of, I don't know how much of it just feels like this is the story Henry Selick wanted to tell versus like, well, because animation, stop motion animation takes such a long time to get these films off the ground. Modern context, you have to use these things, and now we have like some political allegories. I don't think were necessarily needed. Like, we have a very Trumpy looking guy. I don't think we needed that. I don't know, but we're talking about the prison
The
industrial
Siobhan
complex.
character was basically a ripoff of oh god, I'm sorry, I'm fucking blank. God damn it! What's her name from Gravity Falls? Pacifica Northwest from Gravity Falls.
Okay.
As far as her art goes.
That's the thing. I mean, I don't really know if the movie really. It just feels like a simple plot device. Okay, well, we need to bulldoze something, so it's about the prison industrial complex. Did it really need to be about that? It's like
No, that's the thing. I totally agree with you. Like, I think that the film is saying valid things about the prison
yeah.
industrial
Oh, it is. Yeah.
complex, but I just think that it kind of distracts from the paranormal elements of the movie.
I mean, ultimately, it feels like Henry Selick, obviously phenomenal director, never gets enough credit. By definition, the man
I
never
even
gets
fucking
enough
like
credit.
Monkey Bone Dragon.
But that's the thing. It's the same thing with all of his movies that aren't Nightmare Before Christmas, and this is what breaks my heart: is that Henry Selick, excellent director and excellent storyteller. The problem is, he needs a great story, and he'll direct the heck out of it. But we haven't given him quite like the flawless story that
Right.
we
No,
that
that's
we've
a good
had
point
since.
because Nightmare Before Christmas, based on the Tim Burton
Yeah.
concept, and then Coraline, based on the Neil Gaiman book. Yeah, for sure. I
Yes.
didn't even think about it
But
like that.
everything else, though, it's like, well, these again, if the story or the scripting were
How do
better,
you explain James and the Giant Peach being kind of mid?
that's the thing, It's because we need to get. I don't know. That's the thing. And also, I real quick, because everyone's bringing this up now because of Wendell and Wild. And it's really some of our animation nerd brethren. They're really getting on my nerves with this. They're bringing up the whole Pixar debacle with him, and just the fact that I think what no one's talking about is the Shadow. So I don't know if you ever heard about this, Tiki. The Shadow King was a movie that was in development with Henry Selick at Pixar. Pixar for a brief time was debating getting into stop motion. They were
Oh,
trying this,
really?
and
I have
basically
not heard of that. No.
the idea was that they were going to bridge into stop motion for a while, and Henry Selick was going to lead that division. And there was this movie it was a really cool concept called The Shadow King. It started off as a different title, but The Shadow King was the cooler title. And essentially, I think what happened, but again, I don't know. I wasn't there. I don't think anyone's really given it any consideration. Is that I think it was just a mixing of cultures where stop motion animation and computer animation are a little similar, but stop motion, the difference is you have to physically build everything to the armatures and everything to do the animation, which is much more time consuming, and you don't have the luxury of 11th hour changes like you would with a Pixar film. And I think it's less that things were being meddled with, more of like it was just Pixar didn't understand that with stop motion that you can't keep changing the fundamentals of the story to hopefully help the story without really like you've invested a lot of money in building all these armatures and characters, and if you maybe eliminate these characters, that's not good for the that's not good for the production. So sorry, so that's my just 2 cents on it. No one's talking about. We're gonna move on from their point being went a while, quite the good watch.
Koski says Monkey Bone is either underrated or guilty pleasure. Either way, I like it and I ain't apologizing. No, I genuinely really do like Monkey Bone. Like it's definitely got its faults, but it's creative as fuck.
I like the production design of Monkey Bone. I do not care for the movie though.
All right. Anyways, so what do we have next? Halloween
Halloween.
ends. Okay, okay. So, Dragon Red Letter Media of all places was what encouraged me to check out Halloween Ends. I sat out of Halloween Kills. I did see Halloween Kills just to get myself caught up. Once I knew I wanted to see this. And Dragon, I gotta tell you, this definitely isn't like a great, like I for sure would not put it in the pantheon of great art house horror movies that have come out, that I think are much more elevating to the genre. But Dragon, I think people are making way too big of a deal about this movie just based on this movie was terribly marketed. Absolutely, for sure. No question. Because the thing about this movie, Dragon, is that it's barely a Michael Myers movie. And that's why people are pissed, because this movie was basically advertised like it's the final encounter. Oh my god. But Michael Myers basically plays like a supporting role. It's actually all about this teenage kid who accidentally kills a kid when he's babysitting for them, and it's an accident, but the town basically deems him a pariah, and it's all about how an unlucky accident like that could lead to someone going down a dark path. It's actually very Joker-like when I
Basically,
think about
someone
it.
becoming the next Michael Myers.
Exactly. And Dragon, I gotta tell you, I don't think the execution of this movie is great, but I love that concept, and I do think they do some interesting things with it, and I think it's far and away, if not I think Halloween 2018 is probably still like objectively the best movie in this trilogy, just because it's, uh, I feel like a lot of it comes together more, but I think this one is definitely the most interesting out of the three. And I will say that this movie does give some interesting context to Halloween Kills that I'll get to. So in the long run, I think people are freaking out way too much about the whole, like, it's the final encounter and Michael Myers is barely in it. It's like Michael Myers, yeah, he's barely in it, but I think that's actually refreshing. And I think the movie does work well enough. I think the Corey Cunningham character is interesting enough that the movie does hold its own. And actually, I do think that some of the most boring stuff in the movie is the last act with the, oh my god, it's the last encounter with Michael Myers and Laurie Strode. I'm much more interested in kind of like the nature of evil and how it manifests in Haddonfield, and that's what most of this movie was about. So, yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and agree with Red Letter Media on this one. I don't think it's like a masterpiece by any means, but I certainly think it's underrated. I don't feel as strongly about it as I do like Jurassic World Dominion. I think Jurassic World Dominion is just like, that's no masterpiece either, but people give that movie so much shit. But anyways, I'm kind of in a similar boat to this movie in Jurassic World Dominion as far as like my opinion of it versus the fanboy opinion of it. Okay, let's say I don't care for the movie though. Well, I don't care for your face, Dragon. Also, Koski says, I was gonna say before you brought it up, people are overreacting, but I also don't fully blame them because they were advertised a huge finale showdown because between Michael Myers and Laurie Strode. Yeah, but my whole thing is that that's basically what all of Halloween 2018 was already.
I mean, when you think about it, the movie can't entirely be them fighting for the whole
That's
movie.
what I'm
It's going to be,
saying.
it's
And,
like called a
and
final girl for a reason.
that was Halloween 2018 was the fight.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. Give it a few years and Halloween Ends will find its audience and be more respectable eventually. No, this movie is actually pretty much like even it's down to the credit text is the same text as Halloween 3. It was very intentional on David Gordon Green's part to make this not like basically a Michael Myers movie in the sense that Michael Myers is in it, but Michael Myers is certainly not the main focal point. So yeah, this definitely has a lot of shades of Halloween 3 for sure. And I do think people will calm down on it. I think it's more likely people calm down on this than they calm down on Jurassic World Dominion, at least. So, all right. Anyways, okay, Dragon, tell us about Black Adam.
Yeah, so Black Adam, I went in hopeful in regards to like kind of naively hopeful with the whole the whole, like, in a best case scenario, we see either, like like a failed, basically a failed hero turned villain story, or like kind of the, or vice versa, where essentially he's kind of starts off as like he's trying to be an anti-hero. He's kind of like, basically, I didn't want this just to be like, no, don't introduce Black Adam as an anti-hero. Okay, he's got to be, he ultimately starts off as a villain, and over like a course of a few films or like a story, however many other places he shows up, then he kind of softens and you see the anti-hero come out. Like, I don't want to just like, you gotta show a menace there. Like, this guy, he's the character in premise, very simply, is he's the failed Shazam. That's his whole deal. Without him failing, we have no Shazam. It's the Wizard's looking for another guy.
Sure.
So that was my fear going into it, and that was the main thing. Is like, just let him be bad. Just let him be bad for a movie. Okay, like, my hope was that The Rock could be like, again, if The Rock really cares about this, he'll understand the character, and it'll simply be like, I won't let my whole nice guy image get in the way of this. I'm gonna let him be who he is. So at the end of the day, I think it towed the line enough, but that's in the movie ultimately is I enjoyed it, but I think it serviced the character enough. It didn't just make him an outright anti-hero. We did talk about the villainy, and we did show this guy is quite dangerous and such, but it could have been stronger. I mean, it wasn't all anti-hero like I feared, but it could have been more villainy, But I mean, for example, Ultimate Tiki, here's what it is, and here's what might have saved the movie for me. I don't mind that we discussed the anti-hero villain divide, and that's why I appreciate it. We at least we talked about it. The problem was that on one hand, we have the best representation of that, which is him versus the JSA, which brings in the ideological, like, you can't kill people, versus like the people of Kahndaq, which is basically Black Adam's whole deal. He protects the people of Kahndaq, and it's basically the easiest way I can describe it to you is Black Adam is like DC's Doctor Doom to a degree. To a degree. Now he rules over his land like Doctor Doom has Latveria. And, basically the JSA rolls in and they say like, hey, you're a bad guy. And they're saying, well, no, he saved all these people. He can't be a bad guy. And it's a question, like, can he be a bad guy who just cares about this one place? Or like that whole thing. Like, that seems like an interesting premise.
You are a bad guy. It does not make you a bad guy.
Essentially. So I like that we address the shades of gray. So I like that it's kind of like this guy is killing people and he's a bad dude, but there is a path, there is an argument to be made for he's getting results and he's looking over his people. So that interests me. But then in the third act, we throw a CG Wonder Woman villain at him.
Yeah. I'm not surprised.
It's not an actual Wonder Woman villain, but it's pretty much the same deal. It's like, okay, so we just kind of throw we built up like, hey, there's a lure here, and then we pay off the lure with like CG villain that we don't need at all in this movie, and make them all bond together and fight. It's like, just let him go up against the JSA for the movie. That's all you need. So, Black Adam himself is very fun, and like The Rock, he seems like, my hope is that it's The Rock doing what he's wanted to do with the character and everything, versus just like, I just want to be cool for a movie, and basically, I'm sorry, the better way of putting that is like, my hope is that it's not The Rock like, well, I said for years I was going to do Black Adam, so I got to do Black Adam now.
I mean, he is very passionate about it on social media, to the point where his social media feed is like almost kind of like taken over my Facebook feed, even though I don't even think I follow him. So it's like basically the ad campaign for this movie is being really aggressive about the whole like for the fans thing, which Dwayne Johnson seems to be passionate about.
So I like to think that, because again, when he's playing Black Adam, they have kind of almost like a somewhat of a fish out of water thing, because he's been gone for like 5,000 years. So he's in the modern world and he's kind of helping this family out who freed him. And so by that logic, it's like, okay, and he's still being very intimidating and such, but he has like a soft spot for this kid. And it's like, from the comics, he has a soft spot for this family as well. So that's kind of a bridge to him getting reinvested in his land, his homeland. So that's all interesting. That's all good. And that seems to be in tune with the character, despite us kind of changing a few things here and there. So again, he's the standout element. So far, I think Black Adam and mostly Shazam so far, before we get into all of our future stuff with James Gunn, hopefully, they seem to be the stabilizing element of kind of the pre-existing DCEU, because we are kind of in that universe. And the last thing I'll say is you got to remember the DCU did dig a really big hole for this movie in that, well, when our main heroes, Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman previously were very, no, we're going to kill when it suits us. You can't really have them wagging the finger at Black Adam saying, no, you do not kill. So that's why the JSA is in this movie, because, like, okay, these are heroes that we haven't seen kill people, so they can say, no, don't kill people. So, anyway.
Okay, Tar. Yeah, I'm gonna be straight up. This movie's getting a ton of hype, specifically for Cate Blanchett, who is great, who is incredible, and I think she is pretty much a shoo-in for her third Best Actress Oscar with this movie. That being said, Dragon, I really didn't vibe with the movie as a whole. I wanted to vibe with it so much more than I actually did. It's pretty frustrating. Basically, the premise, kind of the elevator pitch for this thing, is that Cate Blanchett plays a composer who's actually an EGOT. That's actually one of the first things you learn about her in like this. She's being introduced on a talk show, and the host says she's an EGOT. So that's cool. Like right away, that that kind of like adds an air of exclusivity to the character. But Dragon, essentially, the idea is that it's basically a Me Too movie, but from a lesbian perspective, if that makes sense, where she is taking advantage of young women in her orchestra, playing favorites via sexual favors and all that good stuff, all that fun stuff. She's very much a predator in that regard. And the movie looks at it through the perspective of, like if basically the movie, like if this was a man, the man would totally be, canceled to hell and back. But because she's a woman, she's able to, to get away with it and to kind of like be a destructive force in the lives of a lot of people working within her orchestra. So Dragon, I do think it's a really interesting premise. And there are individual scenes and moments of the movie that are very striking. Specifically, there's a moment where Blanchett is teaching. She's teaching a Juilliard class. She's basically a guest teacher at Juilliard, and there's she gets into a confrontation with a student about Beethoven and basically the whole political side of the separating the art and the artist, and that whole thing is really, really interesting. I just think the movie itself, it's way too long for one. It's almost 3 hours long. Is it based on a true story? No, it's not. It's designed to feel like it is, though. That was kind of Todd Fields' that was one of Todd Fields' goals with this movie, was to have people, essentially he wanted people to Google that very question when they walked out of the theater. He wanted the character of Lydia Tarr to feel real. And I do think he accomplished that. I just think this movie's way overly long. Dragon, it relies on dream sequences to the point where it flat out feels dated from a screenwriting point of view. I mean, there are so many goddamn dream sequences in this movie to the point where that was what really made me check out, honestly. I don't know. It's really frustrating. It's really frustrating. I don't think this movie has much of a chance at Best Picture. I think it's probably, like, as far as like the Best Picture race goes, it's probably going to be like The Power of the Dog, where it's it's a good movie, but it's just a little too bleak for a Best Picture run. And I am glad that I can definitely get behind Cate Blanchett winning Best Actress, even though I'm not a huge fan of the actual movie. But yeah, given the hype, Dragon, I really wanted to like this a lot more than I did. It's an interesting movie, but it's not a very watchable movie, in my opinion. All
right. Okay, let me tell you about Amsterdam.
Yeah.
So, of course, this is the David O. Russell film, the guy who did American
Hustle.
American Hustle, yes.
Love
So
the
yeah, this
Silver
is
Linings Playbook and I Heart Huckabees.
Silver Linings Playbook is really good.
It is, yeah. That's probably his best movie, honestly.
So, of course, David Russell very much, as he's kind of been known for after American Hustle, it's the star-studded kind of period picture. With Christian Bale, it's kind of his new thing now.
Mhm.
But yeah, you have a great trio here. It's mainly the film centers around our trio of friends here that met during the First World War. You got Christian Bale, Margot Robbie, and John David Washington. Essentially, this is kind of set like right before World War II breaks out, kind of a few years before that kind of gets in full swing. And yeah, so essentially, it's if I recall, it's essentially this is again they say a lot of this really happened, so it's kind of somewhat based on there was probably and this sort of thing did happen like pre World War II. Like we saw the kind of this in like the Chaplin movie, for example, where there were kind of Nazi sympathizers before the Nazis were like fully the bad guys in
Yeah, yeah,
America.
yeah.
So that's kind of the main plot line of this film, where essentially it's like there was an attempt to kind of sway people to the Nazis' lines, of kind of a fascist way of thinking, let's say, right before World War II is in full swing. So David O. Russell here, the man directs a mean movie, and he's. But the problem is, I think it's a little too long, and it's not for a general audience. That's the problem with this thing, where I feel like this. It's I liked this, I did, but I see what he was going for. But I think it's too mundane, and he's like, I like mundane, but this is no Better Call Saul. This is not going to grab an audience like that. That sort of mundanity will.
Is
This
it
is going to be
no Bad Times at the El Royale either?
no, it's no Bad Times at the El Royale. I mean, that's the thing. I liked it, but it's not.
That's always like my go-to for basically like the Albuquerque verse style on screen.
Yeah, that's the thing, because El Royale is like perfectly paced in terms of how you tell that
totally,
story.
totally.
This is not quite that. This is I mean, I liked watching it. I don't mind like kind of like living in the
one
guts.
thing I heard about this movie that kind of made me back off from watching the theater is I heard like a shit ton of it took place in a hotel room.
Well, I don't know if hotel rooms. Well, I mean, the climax essentially is like during like a convention, so it's I don't know. I don't know if hotel basically
exaggerated.
Maybe it's like we're in mansions a lot. Maybe that's what they were thinking. Like we're in kind of like again, it's rich people and fancy offices and mansions and stuff. So maybe it's kind of like a hotel in that regard. So maybe. Regardless, we it's a tale of friendship and conspiracy in the 30s. That's really all you need to know. Christian Bale, he's very good, but also, as you know, water is wet. Also, in mentioning Better Call Saul, a very brief but very, very on-brand role. Ed Begley Jr.'s in this. He's wonderful.
Oh, nice.
He's got like one scene, but it's like, to me, honestly, my favorite scene in the movie. He's really good. It's a scene where Christian Bale meets John David Washington to become buddies, and I love it. And he introduces him. It's like, yeah. So that's great. Unfortunately, and kind of to my surprise, I mean, this movie bombed. And I don't mean bombed to you. I mean, this thing bombed really badly.
It did, yeah.
Which, yeah, it's a shame because I don't think it was that bad at all. I just think it's not for a general audience. I think it's for like someone who can really, I think probably for a film.
I actually think it's one of those movies that probably would have done better on streaming.
Yeah, honestly, yes. This thing would have done great on streaming, I think.
Yeah.
At least everyone would have watched it that way. I don't know. All right.
I could actually see it being one of those movies where when it does inevitably show up on Netflix in 3 months, it actually does very well.
I would recommend checking out just for the heck of it, T, because again, it's quite, it's quite nice.
I probably will watch it if it does come to a streaming service I have access to.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. God. Next up, Pray for the Devil. Fuck this movie. Next.
Okay.
So no, seriously, like, Dragon, this movie had it. Like, I'm always down for a good exorcism movie. I think beyond found footage, it's probably one of my favorite subgenres of horror. Hey, Dragon, you know what the really heartbreaking part of this movie is?
What?
It's directed by the same guy who did The Last Exorcism, which, as you know, is the movie where I discovered Patrick Fabian pre-Better Call Saul.
Good old PFABs.
And The Last Exorcism is one of my favorite exorcism movies and one of my favorite found footage movies. What the hell happened? This movie is so generic, so boring. It's not even worth talking about, Dragon. It's literally like every bad mid-level
supernatural movie you've ever seen. It very much reminded me of like a Winchester or something, where it was just like, or The Nun. You know, it's like it's that level of just like PG-13, like predictable jump scare horror schlock. I really hated it. Like it's only like, I think it's like less than 80 minutes long if you, or less than 90 minutes long if you don't include the credits. But Dragon, oh, I was sitting there. I mean, it's, you know, that famous, I believe I believe it's an Ebert quote. Correct me if I'm wrong, but somebody has a quote where a good movie can never be too long and a bad movie can never be too short. And oh, I was feeling the bad movie can never be too short vibes here. Oh man. Oh, this movie's garbage. Probably, honestly, Dragon, probably the worst movie I've seen all year, if I'm being completely honest. All right.
All right. Okay. Let me tell you about this. This will go by pretty quick. So they added a documentary to Amazon. It's called "The Sound of 007."
Yeah, I saw this advertised on Amazon. I've just never been that big of a 007 guy, so.
I mean, ultimately, Tiki is just, so. This is just for me. I'm always looking for like an all-encompassing Bond documentary because again, I love James Bond, but I don't know if I could just like
actually, now that you say that, I do think that I would absolutely watch a Bond documentary that was done in the same style as like the Friday the 13th.
Yeah, me too. I would love that so much.
Or even if they did it like in multiple parts, like one for each era of Bond.
Yeah. But Tiki, here's the problem with the all-encompassing Bond documentaries: the fact they just keep making them, so it's going to outdate itself. That's the problem.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're going to get another one for a while.
I mean, admittedly, Tiki, now is the time to do it. So you're right, because now we've had at least we're at the end of another Bond era, and it's going to be a while before we find the new guy. So we might as well capitalize like this documentary kind of does. And that's the thing. This documentary is close to what I'm looking for. Where it's essentially it goes over like all the Bond films in terms of like the music and the title songs and and that sort of stuff. So that's good, and it kind of like it's a nice little. And there was like a documentary done before this where it kind of like went over the history of Bond, and it was like kind of in the midst of the Daniel Craig film. So I don't know. It's like I'm always looking for something, but you're right. That would be the dream of like doing like a full on like breakdown on the history of Bond because it's a subject I'm very interested in, but I just don't know if I can really go through all the movies.
Oh, I would never have the patience to do a full marathon.
Because that's the thing. There's a lot of, because that's literally like another. That's like debatably like another. I didn't do the count or anything, but it's probably at least tantamount to how many movies the MCU's got. At least, But that's the thing though, where I feel this documentary was it encompassed the music well. Only problem is I think it's skimped out on the Timothy Dalton Bond, which always bugs me because like, man, Timothy Dalton was Bond. That's awesome.
Timothy Dalton always gets fucking snubbed. He always gets snubbed.
It bugs the crap out of me because it always fascinates me. Oh my god, Timothy Dalton was a James Bond because that guy's really classy and I like that guy. And like, no, we're never talking about.
You want to know my opinion? From the little I have seen of each Bond, I do think that the Timothy Dalton version is probably my favorite.
But I think the reason they snub him is because he was the gritty Bond. I think that's why.
And that's exactly why he's my favorite.
Yeah.
But literally, Timothy Dalton being my favorite Bond is probably just like a leftover thing of my hipster days from college, honestly.
Yeah, probably.
Ringo's my favorite Beatle. Anyways.
Point being, this was a nice way. Honestly, this whole documentary, I think the point of it was this is a nice way to celebrate the fact that all the Bond movies are now on Amazon, like, because of the MGM thing. It was like, okay, well, if you're going to celebrate, you might as well put like a little documentary like this up. And it was nice. That's all I can really say about it. It was nice.
That's fair. All right, Triangle of Sadness, Dragon. Oh boy, this is a movie that really caught me off guard. I did not know much of anything about it going in, except that it won the top prize at the Cannes Film Festival this year. So I knew that it was I knew that it was acclaimed. And come to find out, Dragon, do you remember Downhill, right? The one with Will Ferrell?
I've seen that movie, yeah, I know about it, yeah.
So this was done by the director who did the original version of that movie. I believe it's the Swedish version of that movie.
Right,
I could be wrong about the language, but And but it's an American movie. I think it might be, well, not, I don't think it's an American production, but it's an English language movie. And it's basically a class. It's basically a commentary on class. Essentially, it explores a cruise ship for the wealthy from different perspectives. So you have the perspective of like the the service staff who are like basically going out of their way to suck up to the rich people in the hopes of getting a good tip. You have the rich people themselves who are just kind of like going out of their way to be snobby and just make life hard for the service staff in spite of not really realizing what they're doing. You have the cleaning crew who's kind of beneath the service staff. You have the influencer couple who's not necessarily rich but got on the ship because of their social media status. So you have this whole kind of like eclectic subset of different people from different economic backgrounds on this ship together. And Dragon, the midway point of this movie is fucking phenomenal. And all I will say, it is absolutely the best use of vomit I have ever seen in a movie.
Really?
It's fucking insane. I loved it. It was pure cinema. It was pure chaos. Essentially what happens is that there's this rich woman who is insisting that all the crew take some time off and go on a swim because she's so ignorant to the fact that the crew needs to be doing their goddamn jobs. They can't, there's physically no time to, like she's trying to be nice by extending this olive branch to them. But in reality, Dragon, the crew also means the food staff. And in this swim, they left out some seafood. That's all I'll say. That's what leads to the vomiting is some spoiled seafood. And then the movie kind of, I will say the third act, it is very much a movie that is broken up into 3 acts, 3 very distinct acts. The third act I'm not quite as high on. It's essentially like, I don't know, Dragon. The reason why I'm describing the whole movie is because it's a hard movie to really pin down. But it's all about the social kind of hierarchy, class hierarchy, and how we fit within those roles, how we strive to go above those roles. But the point I'm trying to get, the point I'm trying to get is with the vomit scene is it's a very funny movie. Like through and through, it is it's definitely one of those Oscar comedies, Dragon. It's very smart, very intelligent. Like I said, I think the social satire is just super duper on point and sharp and clever. And the chaos of the vomit scene, I really think, like, Dragon, when I was watching the vomit scene, it was one of those feelings of like, oh man, like this is going to be, I don't necessarily think the movie beyond that scene is going to be studied, but I guarantee you the vomit scene in this movie is going to be studied. It is a fucking, like, it is awesome. It is awesome filmmaking. I know it sounds like a ridiculous premise, but when you see it in action, it is fucking awesome filmmaking. There's even this, there's this one gag that was so Mel Brooks to me. It's a very small moment. I don't even know how many people are even going to notice it. But it's in the middle of a dinner, and there's this, there's like really stormy weather outside, and you can see the windows being fucking like scrubbed down by like a window washer in the middle of a storm. I'm like, oh, that is so Mel Brooks right there. That is such a Mel Brooks sight gag. So yeah, I would recommend this. I really would. I do think it's a little long. It's 2.5 hours long, and I do think that's honestly why I prefer Downhill over this guy's version of the same movie, is because Downhill is another movie that was just, or this guy's version of Downhill was a little too long for its own good.
but this is rock solid. It really is, and I think it's kind of like a fringe contender for Best Picture at this point, at least a nomination. And I am rooting for it to get into the pack because it is a very unique movie with how artfully made it is versus how silly and satirical it can be. So yeah, I would give it a pretty good recommend. All right.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Let me tell you about this is an Apple TV Plus documentary, which they've now recently started doing documentaries. Louis Armstrong's um, Black and Blue. So yeah, this is Black and Blue. Sorry, that's what it is. Yeah, so essentially, it's a documentary on Louis Armstrong. It feels like they should have kind of fast tracked this so it came out during Black History Month or Juneteenth, because this is really kind of a great celebration of Louis Armstrong, and also kind of gets into a lot of racial stuff. And I think the best, aside from just saying it's a good all-encompassing look at Louis Armstrong's life and everything, he's very active in it. I mean, the best part of it for me is there's this framing device. Well, not a framing device. There's kind of this recurring device in the movie where we have kind of this uncensored kind of behind the scenes kind of like recordings of Louis Armstrong just kind of sharing like his take on kind of these unfortunate racial encounters that he's had, and he's like cursing up a storm, and he's like calling people something suckers and everything. It's very old school. It's very old school, and just the fact that like, Louis Armstrong did not take crap from people. He was very vocal about that. He was behind the scenes. He was a tough guy.
Mm-hmm.
And we get into kind of like there was obviously with Louis Armstrong, honestly, with almost all the figures that represented Black excellence, you always had a lot of. It's such an interesting thing. You have a lot of detractors within the Black community, always kind of calling him Uncle Tom's and everything, like with him and Poitier. So he had to deal with that, and apparently he was very. I think because of his mother, he was for some reason he was very. In his early years, he was an advocate for laxatives in terms of sponsorship.
Huh.
It was kind of like a gut health sort of thing, I guess. I don't know. It's basically he was. I was a proponent of that. So again, a lot of interesting little things with Louis Armstrong you kind of learned here. It was kind of fun, like spending some time with him, posthumously through this documentary. It's quite nice.
Cool.
I think Apple TV Plus, they're making some darn good documentaries. They get to give Netflix a run for their money, quite frankly, right now.
Nice. All right, and finally, sometimes in October you're just in the mood for a good Halloween movie, even though it's not really going to be that good. And that's exactly what The Curse of Bridge Hollow is to me. Dragon, this is essentially a Goosebumps ripoff, just through and through. It's a Goosebumps ripoff. Specifically a ripoff of Goosebumps 2, Haunted Halloween, because it's literally all about Halloween decorations coming to life. Yeah, it's not great. It's really not. I will say, I think some of the aesthetics of the movie are a bit more realistic and gritty than Goosebumps. But fuck me, man. I mean, God, we did not, it's like Jack Black and Dylan Monet, like, oh my God, their presence is so sorely missed, Dragon. When you don't have charismatic people like that to carry a movie like this, you just notice the flaws of the story just so much more. So yeah, this wasn't like actively painful to sit through like Pray for the Devil was, but man, it was through and through just a Goosebumps ripoff without much charm. I don't know. There's not a lot to say about it. Right.
Huh. Okay.
There's a rumor that they're going to do a Christmas version with Christmas decorations coming to life and attacking people, and I'm like, I don't know. What? We'll see.
Okay.
All right, TV.
Let's see what's on.
All right. I don't want to spend a lot of time on the Jeffrey Dahmer story because, frankly, I think the internet just kind of like exploded, and I don't know, Dragon. Like, it's so weird. It's such a weird freaking thing. I almost think the discourse over it is more interesting than the show itself. I will say I do think some of the stuff in it is super disrespectful. Like I think the most disrespectful thing to me is like basically anytime you like the courtroom scene with the woman who's breaking down, and then we heard from the actual woman in real life that it's like that scene that just traumatized her over and over again, and the fact that Netflix didn't reach out to any of the victims' families. There is definitely an icky taste in my mouth with this thing.
Well, that's all like stuff that's outside of the show, Tiki.
I understand that, but it's hard to. But when the show itself is so icky, it's hard to separate that stuff. I don't know. I definitely think that Richard Jenkins is the most compelling part about this. I think if he wasn't in it, I don't think I would have even had the stamina to finish it. I mean, Evan Peters is good, but hot damn, I don't want to praise him that much because of the crazy section of the internet that's literally in love with his character. Not Evan Peters in love with his version of Jeffrey Dahmer.
So it is a very fascinating dichotomy we have here in terms of like Jeffrey Dahmer is in some senses kind of revived with this show, which is not a good thing. But by the same token, though, if you're gonna tell that story, at the very least, you're gonna have like ideally, if you're going to do that, if you're going to do it once, this is probably the way to do it. But in doing so, you could do kind of like dig up a lot of bad stuff.
Yeah. Dragon, you know me. I thought the landlord character, the Niecy Nice character, was the most compelling character in the whole thing. And I honestly think they could have done the whole show from her point of view. And I think that would have been a more smart way and more classy way to go about it. I do like obviously the Tony episode is damn good TV.
Exactly,
I mean, it just
right?
is. It just is obviously. But I like beyond that, Dragon, like I said, beyond the Niecy Nash stuff and the Richard Jenkins stuff, a lot of this just kind of boils down to feeling exploitative.
I mean, I just really like how we in the two halves of the show almost you have the first half building up like the actual real life horror of Dahmer, and then the other half is purely victim's perspective, which of course includes like 6 and 8, 8 with the father, 6 with Tony.
No, I do think this show does have a really good structure to it.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. All right, so I guess on the Dahmer thing. So this now here's the thing. I don't think the show itself was necessarily. I think that's just a lot of people is kind of like it's a tricky territory to circumnavigate. But this bit I'm about to bring up for the next pick here. This one I do feel is more. I think is more discourse worthy. So Conversations with the Killer, the Jeffrey Dahmer tape. So Joe Berlinger, he's known for doing like the docuseries and everything, particularly on serial killers, and he did he directed both the Ted Bundy movie with Zac Efron as well as the other Conversations with the Killer things. Apparently, they're doing this as kind of like a series on the killers. So he did one on Bundy, and then John Wayne Gacy, and then of course Jeffrey Dahmer. So I think
I can't wait for the Richard Ramirez season. Hell yeah!
So that's the thing. This to me,
it's like what are we doing? What are we doing?
So this to me, this practice to me feels more disrespectful than just doing like at least an all-encompassing biopic so we can say we did it once and we did it right. Where this feels like this is purely like, think about it. Dahmer comes out, then like a week later or the week of, I think it was like a week later, you do the cash in on the serial killers with this.
And Dahmer is the biggest hit beyond Stranger Things that Netflix has ever had.
Because everyone's going to watch it because it was a real thing that happened. And, it's the fact that we don't touch that thing because that thing is so horrific. We don't like to think about that thing.
Right.
But I feel this to me, like the practice of like, hey, and while people are thinking about Dahmer, let's get more viewership out of them. Like that feels wrong to me. And I mean, it feels like you got to pick one or the other.
And then we also have another Ryan Murphy thing that comes out right after Dahmer as well.
So that's the thing. I mean, admittedly, the series itself, though, I mean, this against the principle of like we taped Conversations with them. Oddly, I think Bundy is most justified for the tape format, but I think this had more legs in terms of story we tell than Bundy. Oddly enough. And I say that in terms of like this kind of plays a little bit more what you were thinking of. There's like they have like this neighbor. There's not because Niecy Nash was kind of a combination of neighbors. There was a woman who called in 911. And the fact is, you had like a neighbor who was not as pivotal in catching him like the Niecy Nash female neighbor was, but you had a guy who, this is like a chilling thing that did not make it into the biopic, didn't make it into the Ryan Murphy show. It was he had a neighbor who was a guy, and he basically had like some eerie stories of like, yeah, Dahmer seemed to be a kind of he was a loner, but he was kind of a nice guy. Like he shares this one story of like, I was needed to get a gift from my sister for her birthday, and Dahmer just gave me $60. I'd buy her something nice. So creepy, very, but still, it's just, I don't know. It's so they had like fun, interesting tidbits like that you never heard about. So I don't know. It was kind of,
it almost feels like it should be like a bonus feature on the Dahmer DVD.
Yeah, exactly. That's the best way of putting it, and it is from the perspective of with the tapes framing device. I'll usually have like a person who was on the other side of the tape. So it was his lawyer, who I believe that's a change they made in the show, which he had a lawyer who was female actually. So it's from her sitting down with Dahmer and kind of going on this adventure of just like this guy who is just confessing to everything. And I think that's the best way these tapes, the tape series works, is when you have a guy who's actually just full on confessing. Like, no, this, just the guy has nothing to lose, and just is fully like just telling you as it is in that very callous, just kind of scary way Dahmer did.
Sure.
All right.
Okay, let's see. Sorry, what's next? We have Haunting of Bly Manor. Alrighty. So this is actually why I didn't get around to watching She-Hulk. I just really wanted to get this in because Mike Flanagan had another show out this month. So I wanted to make sure I had like the entire Mike Flanagan catalog watched. And I gotta tell you, Dragon, Bly Manor really surprised me. I actually think I might like it just a little bit more than Haunting of Hill House, which is controversial. I will say I do think Haunting of Hill House probably has higher highs than Bly Manor. Haunting of Hill House has two moments in particular. There's an episode during a storm in a funeral parlor that has like the one take gimmick that is really, really effective. And then there's also something they do with the origin of a ghost in that show that is honestly one of the most mind-blowing takes on the concept of ghosts I have ever seen in fiction.
Really?
But I do think that Haunting of Bly Manor, I think overall as a show, it's a little bit more digestible. I think Haunting of Hill House, like my problem with Haunting of Hill House, as good as it was, is it jumped around in time a lot. And it, especially for the first few episodes, it was pretty hard to follow. You definitely got the groove of it eventually, but there are a lot of different timelines in Hill House. With Bly Manor, there's still different timelines involved. As a matter of fact, Bly Manor adds something that Hill House didn't have, which is a Titanic-style framing device where the lead character is telling the story like decades later. But I think that framing device actually adds a lot because it adds an unreliable narrator component to things, which I think, frankly, gives the whole thing kind of like an added level of legitimacy and feeling like a ghost story. And so the show itself, it's from a nanny's perspective in the 1930s, I believe. And she is an American nanny who travels to the UK. I believe it's like the United Kingdom. Like I'm not sure exactly where. But she's overlooking two children who have been recently more or less orphaned outside of their uncle. Their uncle is the person who hired them, who hired the nanny. And I'm not going to go into like a lot of detail. That's just the setup. But creepy shit starts going down, and we learn a lot about the history of the house. And it's also a queer ghost story, which I think is really interesting and unique, and especially in the context of a queer story from the from the 19th century. Really, like you don't see that all too much. So like I said, I think Haunting of Hill House the two really notable things about that show, the two standout things that everyone remembers, I don't think anything in Bly Manor reaches that level. But like I said, I do think Bly Manor just as a whole is a little bit more tangible, a little bit more watchable, a little bit more realistic than Haunting of Hill House. So I think the two are really, really good double features with each other. All right.
Okay. All right, so let me okay, let's talk about The Watcher.
Yeah,
So we both have seen this.
I have.
This is the other Ryan Murphy series, very shortly after Dahmer.
Indeed. This feels so superfluous after Dahmer, honestly. This is very forgettable. For me,
Yeah.
I was familiar with the true story. And honestly, I think the true story is like way, way, way more creepy than anything this show. Like, I think this is one of those classic examples where it's like adapting a short story to a longer format, and the power of the short story just kind of gets eroded in the process. For me, at least. How did you feel? You're not as familiar with the. Sorry.
I was going to ask you I was going to ask you what the difference is between the article this is based on and the and then the series that we got. Like, how is it scarier?
Well, for one, I think one of the components about this show I really didn't care for is how they aged up the daughter and had that whole subplot about her sleeping with the security guy and everything. None of that's in the show. Frankly, I feel like that was an excuse to just sexualize a teenage girl because Hollywood is going to be Hollywood.
Okay, come on. Let's not go that direction with it. But,
well, no, but my whole thing is the Youngblood thing from the notes is very accurate to the actual notes. And having a teenage daughter, like, it just doesn't hit the same as having young children, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Although I still think the stuff with the teen daughter was pretty exploitive.
Well,
I will say I do like the show's cast. Bobby Cannavale, Naomi Watts. Let's see, you have
Margot Martin,
Margot Martindale. I mean, it's kind of a who's who.
Oh yeah, no, for sure.
But yeah, I don't know. What do you think? Because I'm obviously much more familiar with the story, so I think I probably have a bias against this to a certain extent.
So I thought this was a good concept, but for me, it lost steam fast. I mean, real fast. For me, it's that I don't think it helps. I'm not saying you can't have a story that ends well with this, but it just feels like the fact that it doesn't really have an ending, I think, really hurts it fundamentally.
Yeah. Which, I mean, like, you were never going to have a satisfying ending to this thing because the story itself doesn't have a satisfying.
I didn't know that, though, watching it. So I went into this very clean, just hearing that it's somewhat based on a true story, and I had no idea what this true story was. I just went into this blind. So, yeah, I mean, I love Cannavale. Honestly, I think the best, most I think one of the most interesting things they did with it was the John Graff, or at least the guy we believe to be John Graff. That guy's backstory was terrifying. The problem for me with this series is, I mean, it really
made up.
No, I'm aware. That's what I'm saying. Like this, I heard it was based on like a different guy, though. Like there was like a murder that happened similarly to that. But to your point, yes, it's very much obviously all very fictitious. So, the problems for me are that there's way too many suspects, and all the neighbors are very unlikable at the outset, and unrealistic at the outset. That to me is like it just kills the mystery right away when I'm questioning so many choices in this show. I mean, when there's so many like leaps in logic, it's just and the fact that Tiki, ultimately this would have been better served as a movie in terms of 2 hours versus 7 episodes.
Absolutely.
And it's for example, everyone is very suspicious, and how do they not, like, why the heck are they just not telling them, like, oh, this is who bought the house before you? Like, why do we have to, like, kind of cloak and dagger all that? And it's like we're doing this fake deaths plot with Margot Martindale and Richard Kind, and they come back and
fucking ridiculous.
fucking ridiculous.
Which initially I'm thinking, okay, they have to be the killer because they faked their deaths. But it's like, wait a minute, how does that even work?
It's
And-
that I also thought that the whole thing with like them having the actress coming in on the security camera, I'm like, what the fuck even?
I don't
is
buy
this at
how
this
he's
point?
getting in trouble there. It's like, well, wait a minute, someone broke into my house and possibly violated me. How am I the bad guy here?
Yeah, right. And then Dragon, like I said, the daughter is just such a problematic character, man. She really is, because the whole getting on Twitter or whatever and canceling her, like, my dad's a racist. Like, it's all just fucking infuriating. Frankly, I didn't find any of these characters likable, not even Cannibal, if I'm being honest. Like, I like Cannibal as an actor. I didn't find his character to be all that endearing.
I was literally about to mention the daughter thing, Tiki, but thank you for going on that one. But yes, no, as the whole daughter labeling her father a racist was like that. It's like, come on, man, really? You're just gonna.
And I love how the biggest consequence of that whole thing is literally that they get kicked out of the country club.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's not.
That's even, like, literally like the only consequence.
Yeah, it's not even like I was thinking he was going to get fired and he had no way of paying off like that house. That was going to be that's the logical consequence, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot. Basically, it's wall to wall BS ultimately. And how the heck does it take that security kid that long to put up those security cameras? And better question. Here's the thing that drove me crazy. How is there not a camera trained on the mailbox?
Yeah.
Of all the cameras, how do we not put one looking at the mailbox?
Mm-hmm.
So it's just ultimately that just killed that show for me. Initially, I found Carnival likable and I was rooting for him, and then ultimately it's like, I don't know, because he was defending his family against all this craziness, but then the craziness just overwhelmed him, and then things got complicated. And was like, oh, so he wrote a letter now? Come on, this is ridiculous.
No, it's really bad. It's really bad.
Like the PI's taking credit for things. I don't know. There's a whole litany of no.
All right. I love you. You love me. I don't have much to say about this except it absolutely should have been a movie instead of a TV show. Literally, it's a two-part documentary. Literally, episode 1 is called I Love You. Episode 2 is called You Love Me. It's a Barney documentary. It's about the.
It is?
Yeah.
Oh my God! Get out of here! This is. I saw that title and I thought, okay, I was joking in my head, like, this is gonna be like a Barney documentary.
No, it's literally a Barney. That's exactly what it is.
Really? It is a Barney.
It's on Peacock.
Okay, is it any good?
Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, it's fine. It's fine. It's just like it's honestly not anything too juicy, you know. It's I do think the most interesting part of it is how the image of Barney has been kind of like warped and transformed over the years, and how Barney was a pretty controversial figure, even though the creator of Barney is just basically just an old woman who wanted to bring education to kids, very much like an earnest kind of like Sesame Street kind of thing. So
okay,
that is what the documentary explores, is kind of like how Barney sort of like became like the most hated character in children's media for a period of time.
So they talk about that, then they talk about the whole hate, like that parents hated him, right?
No, that's like pretty much the main point of the documentary.
See, I'm sold with that, man. I want to see that. I want to see him talk about how this children's
It's just not. It's not as interesting as you would think, man.
Really?
It's really not.
Oh man.
I mean, look, you might find it more interesting than I did. But basically, I've seen YouTube videos that are more interesting than this.
Okay.
I'm not saying that it's not worth watching. I'm just saying it feels like the type of documentary where, it's really not that hard to understand why parents didn't like it. It's, because the show itself is very, like, I don't know. I feel like it's kind of like examining a subject that's kind of self-explanatory.
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
So,
why is it 2 parts then, you think?
I honestly think it's 2 parts just so they could do the whole, like, episode 1 is I love you and episode 2 is you love me.
Really? That's the thing. I was thinking
It's
perhaps
literally 2 50-minute episodes, Dragon. It's literally an hour and 40 minutes long.
because
There's no reason for this to not be a movie.
because you'd think if there was like a logical reason, obviously there's not, but if there were like a logical reason, it would be like, okay, we're gonna have a dramatic cliffhanger, and then we're gonna get to the part 2 where all the good stuff happens.
Nothing like that.
See, that's such a
to some
tease.
extent, episode 1 is like the origins of Barney, and episode 2 is the controversy. To some extent, yes.
So literally,
But
okay, so literally all the good stuff.
But still, that's what's called a film.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm seeing but so yeah, that's a kind of disappointing because I'm hearing like, oh my god, it's a Barney documentary. We talk about how terrible he was, but we're not. Okay.
All right.
Okay. Yeah. So let's talk about She-Hulk: Attorney at Law.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean, when they announced they were doing more, Marvel shows after the Marvel Netflix shows, and they're doing the Disney Plus thing of it all here, I of course pie in the sky hope was like at some point we got to do She-Hulk because now we have the means to do it. And it's not like the regular Hulk thing, so no rights issues or anything. We could do it. So I was always very hopeful for this show of all those MCU shows announced, and. Yeah, it looks ultimately this is like the most divisive MCU show. Apparently, it seems.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Honestly, Dragon, from the episodes I have seen, I haven't seen the Daredevil stuff yet.
I know,
but from what I have seen, right, it's not worth getting pissed off over. I just think that it's a little disposable. Is all. It's probably one of the most disposable things in the MCU, at least as far as like some of those, some of those more filler episodes go. But yeah, it's mid, Dragon. It's mid. It's not terrible. I think Eternals is way, way, way objectively worse than this, but it is mid.
Yeah, for me, so there's I think the biggest thing that everyone's collectively kind of like loving is Tatiana Maslany as She-Hulk, which is great. She's the best part of the show, honestly. It's like, yeah, that's the big takeaway. I mean, in a weird way, when you look at She-Hulk, to me, it seems that in a weird way the show is somewhat critic-proof because of the meta context, because of like, well, any backlash it does get is kind of foreseen in the writing, but that I don't know if that necessarily fixes anything. But I don't know. It's kind of like I think it's a far more acceptable version of what the Teen Titans Go does in terms of like they're like
I can see that. Yeah.
We are what we are. Only it's like, well, they're actively saying something about it instead of like, okay, that's just our get out of jail free card that's not actually getting us out of jail. I ultimately I like it, but I don't like the stalls. That basically the pacing is the issue that I have with it. Like 4 and 5, after episode 4, debatably 5. That's when you kind of get into the stall with 6 and 7, where it's like, okay, we have basically 2 episodes back to back that say the same thing again, and I don't quite need that. What I need desperately is episode 8, which is the best part of the whole series. And then 9, which is pretty good too, and that's divisive, but I think 9 is actually good and a good companion for 8. But obviously 8 easily best part of the show. Which, if you look back on it, if the whole series could have been 8 onward, I think it would have been much more universally beloved because that's kind of what the show should have been. But again, on the whole, I think the show was on brand for She-Hulk, who even in her debut was kind of a divisive character because again, it's literally what they brought up in the show. Like, it's a lady Hulk. I don't need a lady Hulk. But obviously a lot more.
Okay, but the difference between She-Hulk and a character like Riri Williams, for example, is like She-Hulk has a legacy behind her.
Yeah.
Riri Williams, it feels like they're just trying to force.
Riri Williams, it's a weird recency thing where you look at Miss Marvel. I think there's a lot more legs to stand on there. Riri Williams is like, hey, let's do a kind of a new Iron Man.
Miss Marvel, there's absolutely more legs to stand on. Absolutely.
But you know what else it also is, Tiki? If you think about it within the context of the MCU, it's that Miss Marvel is like, well, we need to do damage control on Captain Marvel. Where on the flip side, well, we all love Robert Downey Jr. Iron Man. We just lost him. We don't necessarily need another Iron Man.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, give Rhodey the spotlight. Why are we bringing the girl in? We don't know this kid.
And I am not looking forward to the nerd culture discourse surrounding the people from the bad side of nerd culture just being actively racist towards her, and then us just feeling like she's just a mediocre character, and that just getting all lost in the shuffle like it always does. Fun times.
I mean, if I'm a betting man, I think best case scenario, what we're looking at is if Shuri, assumedly, and again, we don't know it for full on, but I think we can make a pretty educated guess that Shuri probably going to be the new Black Panther. Riri Williams might be filling somewhat the Shuri space, but in her own story. Like, she won't be necessarily have to stay in Wakanda, but I think she'll be the tech savvy kind of Shuri if Shuri is elevating to kind of a Black Panther status, if you will.
Right.
Anyways, point being, I think the show was on brand for She-Hulk. I think season 2, my hope is that season 2 will take notes from the first season, seeing like, man, episode 8 only really worked. Let's do that for season 2. Kind of like Stranger Things. Stranger Things in the last 2 episodes of the first season, I think, not that it was bad or anything up to that point, but I think everyone was in the know, and that's where we're going full on beyond that point. So yeah, let's pick up the steam from there.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Midnight Club. This is definitely 4 out of 4 in regards to my rankings of the Mike Flanagan shows. The other 3 being Haunting of Hill House, Bly Manor, and Midnight Mass, which is easily my favorite of the 4. But it's still really, really good, and it's a different beast than the other ones, while still having a lot of Mike Flanagan's style and sort of like philosophical musings. So the basic pitch is that the Midnight Club is a club that basically an after-hours ghost storytelling club that forms in a youth cancer center. So kind of like a Ronald McDonald House sort of setup where all the people there are like teens, young adults who are suffering from terminal illnesses. It's not all cancer. There's a kid with AIDS. There's a couple. It's mostly cancer. But the character with AIDS is definitely like a good example of how it's not all cancer. But anyways, they gather, they tell ghost stories. There's a cult-like element to it where the lead character is drawn to the location because she has heard a story of someone who has gone to this treatment center and actually gotten cured. And I really like a lot of this show, and the ghost story element of it is really interesting because it does make the show a bit of an anthology, because what they do is they have the same actors who are in the Midnight Club itself, which, by the way, the Midnight Club just obviously total Midnight Society vibes, obviously, no doubt. But so it's like you have all the stories kind of like are mirrors of the characters' like fears and anxieties surrounding death. Death is like the big focal point. It's very much kind of like a horror series that kind of like examines the philosophy and sort of like cultural musings of what death is, and how different people experience it and react to it. Episode, is it 7? I want to say it's 7. Episode 7 of this show fucking floored me. I don't want to give away anything, but episode 7 was just amazing TV. I was like, just the way that it's structured, the point of view, the way it almost feels like a standalone Twilight Zone episode, but it is in the context of the story, and it obviously makes sense in the context of the story. I can't say much, but episode 7 is like that is the big episode. Honestly, Dragon, even for you, I would recommend this because there are definitely a couple things that might be a little bit intense as a fan of as someone who's not a horror fan. But I do think the best elements of this are the characters, the musings on death. I think the ensemble cast is really, really likable. Like, it's one of those things where it's like you love all of these kids, and yet they are all objectively going to die. So it's, it's kind of an emotional roller coaster the whole time, because the show does a really good job of attaching you to the characters, and the characters obviously have an expiration date behind them. And I do think that most of the stories are more kind of like in the Are You Afraid of the Dark variety of, like, I think you could handle most of them. And they do, like I said, the stories themselves, although sometimes they can break up the pace a little bit, they do a really good job of fleshing out the supporting characters. Because each episode, a different character tells a story, granted with the caveat that there's one character that tells a 3-part story that kind of like evolves throughout the season. So yeah. And literally, Dragon if you're worried about jump scares, literally the first story is just a big old fuck you to jump scares, because it's like the character is like telling the story and she's just throwing in like a million jump scares, and the characters are just all giving her a ton of shit about it. It's hilarious. So like it does not rely on jump scares at all. It's like, I don't like this character. Yeah, because she's black. Wait, no, that's not. No, he's not with us. Yeah, no, Koski. It's like I will tell you, man, that whole culture war bullshit. I am done. I'm done. I hate it. I really hate it. You love all these kids, but they're all objectively going to die. Well, I mean, that's just real life. Yeah, that could have been worded better. Anyways. So yeah, strong recommend for the Midnight Club. Like I said, I would say out of Flanagan's TV shows, it's number 4 out of 4, but I frankly think that all of Flanagan's TV shows are low-key masterpieces. I'm not exactly thrilled that this ended on a cliffhanger when all of Flanagan's other stuff has been standalone, but with this being an anthology and based on a young adult book series, I can understand why they would want to expand it, and I will definitely check out a season 2. So, yep.
Something you said earlier, I just wanted to note here.
Sure.
It's not all cancer. Also, the working title for Breaking Bad.
It's not all cancer.
It's not all cancer. It's more
It's
to the
not
show.
all cancer.
Yeah, it's not all cancer. No, I know what you're seeing in the first season now. There's going to be more to it. It's not all cancer.
Oh, man, that's cute.
Where's the card in the writer's room that says that? Let's see that one.
All right. And finally, after almost 2.5 hours, let's close this out with some ketchup.
All right. Okay. So it's Sydney. So this is I meant to get this. I would have loved to have gotten this in last month in like the movies of that month when it came out. Unfortunately, it's kind of slipping.
That's kind of how I feel about Terrifier 2.
Yeah. Yeah, so this thing basically came out the 28th of September, but I forgot about it. And it was point being, so Sydney is the Sidney Poitier documentary. It's on Apple TV Plus.
Oh,
so
right,
it's interesting.
right, yeah.
So close to get Apple TV Plus is now getting into the feature-length documentary game.
Ironically, with 2 things that really should have been saved for Black History Month.
Yeah, ironically, right? But yeah, then they were both.
You're just
really
a couple
great.
months away, guys. Come on.
This seriously, man, this was very, very eloquently done. So Oprah Winfrey, I guess her company, or she basically she didn't direct it herself, but Oprah Winfrey produced this documentary because she is a huge fan of Sidney Poitier. He was like her hero growing up, so she made a documentary on him, which is really nice. And covers his career very well. And ultimately, it's kind of like the last interview, because again, Poitier was there for quite a long time. So basically, a lot of the interviews of him are him reflecting on his life, again with the eerie kind of fact of like his probably one of the last things he did before he passed. Kind of doing this thing, because it's probably intended to be just kind of it's not really talking about the death of Poitier. It's about the life of Poitier. So it's kind of him like kind of like reflecting on his life up to this point. So there's kind of that element to it. It grabs you from the get-go, man. Like, I believe at the start of the film is basically like Poitier telling you this story about how he wasn't expected to live as a baby, and like his father like brought a shoebox up to like get prepared to get the dead baby, and he lived. Very Herculean stuff, and you of course begin to how see just how much life the man lived and how much of a game changer he was, and you have some harrowing stories that he tells. About like some trips down south and like growing up as a kid, like he was like I believe there's this one story he was like forced to walk out of town and like some like racist like sheriff or something basically like warned him like if you turn back we're gonna shoot you.
Oh my god.
So he had to walk out of the town and like not even like turn his head. He had like just knowing they were behind him rolling up in a car is like creepy.
Mm.
But yeah, the director on this, Reginald Hudlin, if I'm saying his name, Reginald Hudlin, he did a documentary called Black Godfather, which I believe, I don't know if it's still on Netflix or not, but that was good. And also did the movie Marshall with Chadwick Boseman, which I really
Okay,
liked.
yeah.
And he produced Django Unchained. So this guy got good credits to his name and did the House Party movie back with Steve Martin.
Mm.
Anyway, yeah, so this seriously, Tig, I would, I mean, I know you'd probably find other means of doing this. I'm only going to have Apple TV Plus until Ted Lasso season 3, but it's, yeah, this is really good, man. This is worth checking out. This is an excellent kind of documentary on Poitiers.
Cool, cool. Right, so we have the Woman King. Yeah, this was kind of just meh. I don't know.
Really?
Yeah, unfortunately.
Was it Black Panther like? Because that's the vibe I got from it.
I mean, honestly, not really. Honestly, if it's anything light, it's Last King of Scotland light.
Okay.
Because and that's a weird comparison. I just say that because the way that it uses the main character is basically like an audience surrogate character to kind of like get into the action, even though the main character doesn't really matter to the plot at all. Yeah, let's just say Last King of Scotland did that a lot better. This movie isn't bad, man, but it's like Laserdue gave it a 6 out of 10 is in his review, and I couldn't agree more. There is some really good production design. I appreciate the fact that the movie has, like, you know, a lot of good stunt work and practical battle scenes and sword fights and stuff like that. But man, like I said, the one of my big problems with this movie is that you have the Viola Davis character, who is like easily the most compelling thing about the movie. Like, you know, it's just really, really cool to see an actress like Viola Davis just transform herself into just like, she is a presence in this movie, as you might expect in the trailer. But then, like I said, Dragon, this is one of those movies where it's like the nanny in Hellboy or something. You know, it's like you have this character who is just very clearly thrown in to just be like, oh, we can't tell the story of these actual remarkable historical people. We need to throw in an audience surrogate character so the audience does it, because the audience needs a POV character that they can relate to. Oh, God. You want to know the dumbest thing?
What?
So this audience POV character ends up being the daughter of Viola Davis. And you know how Viola Davis finds this out?
How does she find this out?
When the daughter was an infant, before she got taken from Viola Davis literally implanted a shark tooth into her shoulder.
Huh.
And she dug the shark tooth out of her shoulder. What?
What? Unless you're Nacho Varga, I don't think that really works.
Dragon, that pissed off Laserdue, and it pissed off me too, man. It's like a major fucking plot point, man. It's supposed to be like this big reveal, but you were just so thrown out of it by just like the leaps in logic from it, man. Oh God. And then outside of that, they throw in some, like, I don't know, some Ben Barnes looking motherfucker who to play like a handsome conquistador who the main character has a romance with.
Is he
and
actually?
Why are you doing that? What, like? No, this movie is so, honestly, I don't know. Honestly, Laserdue might have been a little bit generous with a 6 out of 10. It's more like a 5 out of 10 because it has a couple good performances and it has some good production values. But goddamn, is the screenplay a mess, man? This is just, it is just, oh man, it's so filled with the types of Hollywood screenwriting holes that just annoy the hell out of me. Ooh.
What's the thing? What's the thing you like Ben Barnes from?
Ben, what is outside of Westworld? I don't know. What is the thing I like Ben Barnes from?
I know what I know him from. I'm wondering what you know him from. You dropped a very specific Ben Barnes reference there. I'm wondering what it is.
Well, I dropped the specific Ben Barnes reference because the dude in this movie literally looks like Ben Barnes.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like again, like the thing I know Ben Barnes from, you probably probably forgotten more about. But I'm wondering what the thing you're thinking of from is.
I'm thinking of Prince Caspian, honestly.
Because I'm thinking of Jigsaw from Punisher.
Yeah, I'm thinking of Caspian.
Okay. All right. So speaking earlier of Django Unchained, let me tell you about Day Shift.
Okay.
Day Shift. I meant to.
This just looks like the 2022 equivalent of Bright to me, which is not a big selling point.
Okay, you're gonna like. Okay, so it's so funny you mentioned Bright. Not Bright, but you're on the right track. It's more like, imagine kind of a better version of R.I.P.D.
Oh, okay. But I mean, R.I.P.D. is just a Men in Black ripoff. So.
That's what I'm saying. So it's kind of like it's not Men in Black.
So that's not like a huge selling point.
I'm saying, let me put it this way. Yeah, on the scale, on the little number line, if you will, you have Men in Black on the really good side of things. Down the line, you got R.I.P.D. and the ripoff side of things, and maybe like one or two rungs, like not too close to Men in Black, not in the middle per se, but you're 2 rungs away from R.I.P.D. You got Day Shift.
God, nice.
So essentially, yeah, Day Shift. It's a fun vampire movie. It's not Yates by any stretch, but I really like the buddy component. Essentially, I was waiting for October to get to this thing. Because vampires and such. My fantasy of vampire movie specifically is like it's a buddy movie with Jamie Foxx, who essentially is a vampire hunter, kind of Diet Coke Blade, if you will. Only if Blade were not a vampire. And Dave Franco. It's like Dave Franco and Jamie Foxx. And I think they have really good chemistry together, and I think they have like a good comedic dynamic. It's pretty much a buddy movie, but then there's a quite. I gotta make kind of an impressive twist that we have at a certain point in the movie where it's like, wow, I did not see it going that direction. That's kind of interesting, and we kind of ran with it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I ultimately like the status. I like the status quo where you hunt vampires for cash, and Jamie Foxx has a family situation in which he really needs cash, because he never told his family that he hunts vampires. So he has a divorce because of that, and he wants to make sure his daughter doesn't move away. Pretty straightforward. Mm-hmm. So yeah, just not much of a plot, but aside from the funny dynamic, just it's not great. It's kind of forgettable, but it's a nice Halloween watch. That's all I can really say about it.
Okay. All right, Morbius. It's Morbin time.
Yeah, so you'll notice how I grouped the vampire movies together. Tell me about Morbius.
I'm gonna be honest with you. Obviously, this movie is not great at all. But...
Get out, Morbius, not great. Who could have told you that?
Dragon, I had a decent enough time with this thing on the basis of it being a throwback to bad early to mid 2000s comic book movies. It very much felt like a throwback to that because of how because of the pace of it, how it built things up. I don't know. Like there's just a certain vibe of it. Like Venom also feels like that, but Venom actually has some legitimately like good components to it as well. This is more or less just like, like the vibe of Venom being kind of like a throwback to bad 2000s comic book movies, but just without any of the charm or benefits of having Tom Hardy as your main character. So, and instead your main character is like one of the biggest pieces of shit in Hollywood. Just saying. But
aggressive, but it's not.
You know my feelings on Leto. I'm gonna keep being aggressive. But don't sigh at me.
I was saying, a little decorum would be nice, but
Anyways, and so yeah, I don't know, man. Like I said, I did get I actually turned this on one of the days where I just wasn't feeling great. Like I had a migraine and I just wanted to watch a turn your brain off movie, and I was like, oh yeah, Morbius. And I got to admit, it did work in that regard.
That'll do it.
Yeah. So yeah, it's pretty much what you would expect. I didn't hate watching it. I'll say that much. I did not hate watching this.
I in fact did hate watching this.
Fucking put that on the poster. Tiki didn't hate watching Morbius.
It's the best
Like I
review
said,
it's
the
ever
only
gotten.
reason I didn't hate watching it is because I was kind of delirious from being sick, and so I was like, this feels like I'm watching a bad 2000s comic book movie.
It'll cure delirium.
Yeah.
Let me tell you about John Dies at the End. So yeah, I heard the praises for this. This is like one of those cult hit sort of things.
Oh yeah, I've heard the title all over the place. Yeah.
So yeah, I've always heard like it being kind of hoisted. And honestly, the final straw for me to finally seek it out at some point was I read this book that Don Coscarelli put out, the guy who directed Bubba Hotep, and he talked about like how John Dies at the End really grabbed him, and the fact that it was like it's based on a novel. And he read this book, and essentially it intrigued him so much, like a movie. Basically, a story where it tells you in the top John dies at the end. He had to know more. So it's like what kind of like the guts of a story would have to do is to spoil the ending. That always intrigued him, and he read, and then, of course, there's more to it than that. And he really he liked it, and he turned it into a movie. And honestly, again, here's the thing: it's based on a novel, and it kind of watches like it is based on a novel, which I think works in its favor, but also against its favor for me. In that it feels like we're doing stuff that's in a book for the heck of it, where it feels like maybe more explained in a book than it is ultimately can be in a movie. You're basically thrown into a status quo, which I think starts off really strong. We basically have like these two slacker guys, kind of very much somewhat of a Clerks is probably the wrong example, but kind of slacker types. You got David Wong and you got John, hence the title. These two guys, they're buddies, and essentially they have supernatural experiences, but they approach it very nonchalantly. Like, oh yeah, we've had our supernatural run-ins. Like I killed a zombie last week, and I do this and that sort of stuff. So it's not really explained, but that's the charm. It's like so this just happens.
Mm-hmm.
It's very Clerks the animated series, if you will.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Essentially, here's the thing. Essentially, our guys here get injected with this thing they call soy sauce. Now, the soy sauce is essentially it's like a symbiote of sorts that gives you cosmic awareness, in which you get to see these supernatural things that no one else can see. And also, I think the thing you'd like most about this movie is Paul Giamatti is the framing device.
Sold.
Giamatti is basically like a reporter interviewing David Wong, and basically David Wong's blowing his mind with the story that's going on here.
Yeah, you know me, I love me some Giamatti.
There's some twists and turns of Giamatti I think you'd really like.
It's been a long time since we've had like a really good Giamatti performance, man. We're due for one.
We are. Also earlier, I don't know if you mentioned it. Do you mention that Koski mentioned they're doing an Andy Kaufman documentary? A new one?
No, I did not mention that.
Yeah, they're doing a new Andy Kaufman documentary. Sounds awesome. Apparently, your boys are doing it too, the Safdie brothers.
Oh, my boys. Oh, cool.
Your boys.
I mean, I honestly have no idea how that would fit their style, but because their style is literally like anxiety in the form of cinema.
Have you ever seen them do a documentary before? Is that like
what?
Have you ever seen them do or produce a documentary before?
No. Literally, their only movies have been Good Time and Uncut Gems so far.
I might have misread the comment. They might be just producing it. But
okay. That would make more sense then. Yeah.
So I think Koski cited like a different director. Okay. So yeah, he's confirming right now. So the Safdie brothers are producers. There you go. Okay. But still, they're breaching into it. Your boys. The boys have fingers on it.
My boys.
Your boys. Anyway, so point being, you have
is actually kind of starting to pop up in movies too.
He does.
He was in oh fuck.
Well, wasn't he in Cherry? Or am I misremembering that?
Yeah. God, what was the Paul Thomas Anderson movie from last year? My memory is so shit, dude. Licorice Pizza.
Oh, there you go.
He was in Licorice Pizza.
So apparently they're big Kaufman fans, which that tracks. Anyway, so point being, Tiki, you'd like this. It's a trippy indie movie with a lot of heady concepts and off the wall, like dark comedy elements to it. But ultimately, it's no Bubba Hotep. There's not I think it's a little too complicated for its own good. And the biggest problem is that it's interesting, and then it kind of peters out by the end. That's the thing that kind of gets me, where it's like, okay, intrigue. I'm thrown into a status quo. I'm liking I'm liking our stuff here, and then it's just like, and the movie's just kind of going through the motions. And okay, I don't know why we're going through the motions. Ultimately, John Dyson, I think, a little overhyped. The movie, at least. I don't know how the book is, but yeah.
Yeah, no, it's honestly one of those movies where I kind of get the vibe, like it's almost kind of like an Office Space or something for me. Where
I
it's
think
like,
it was more for its time, TG. I think at its time it was
right,
revolutionary.
right.
Now it's kind of commonplace, maybe.
I feel like it was kind of like in the Ready Player One era, and I'm sure it's better than Ready Player One. I'm sure it holds up better than that, but still.
Yeah.
All right. So, oh god, I got to admit, I'm kind of by I need to just. Okay, so Dragon, I have like 3 of them in a row, right?
You have, well, I mean, we both did some of these. You have 1, 2, you have 2 left, and then there's the ones that there's
Okay,
one that
but
we saw.
so
You have 3 in a row.
Yeah, 3 in a row. You've seen Man with the Screaming Brain before?
Well, no, you and I saw it for the first time together.
Okay,
Go ahead.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right, so Fall. Yeah. Oh god, this fucking podcast is so long. I need to just push through because I actually really like this movie and am really enthusiastic about it. Yeah, this is the movie where they climb up on top of the radio tower or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have a ton to say about it. It's just really, really well executed. It's a good little bottle movie for sure. I don't necessarily think it's as good as something like 127 Hours, which I still think is like the survival movie. Like that is like the Citizen Kane of survival movies as far as I'm concerned. But it's good. It's good. I do think that the 2 leads are they bounce off of each other very well. They have a really good, a really believable chemistry with each other. I think the effects are awesome because as far as I know, I'm pretty sure they shot this movie, I don't know, something like 80 feet or something off the ground, and you could just not tell. Like, I mean, it's like, it looks like they are up there, man. I do think this movie gets a little bit repetitive with, like, it essentially plays out as a series of, like, oh, they have an idea on how to get down, and then that idea doesn't work out, and then they have another idea on how to get down, and then that idea doesn't work out. And it basically rinses and repeats that for an hour and a half. It's really compelling stuff, but it's really compelling just based on the sense that the whole thing takes place on this, on this like platform miles above the ground. But like I said, the actual plot, when you break it down, there's not a ton there. There's really not. There is kind of like a theme of like the main character overcoming her trauma because the movie starts with a cold open of her boyfriend dying in a rock climbing accident. And so that's why her best friend is pushing her to do this. It's kind of like a symbolic, like, like moving on sort of thing. Which, by the way, is totally fucking dumb and nobody in real life would attempt this, but it's a movie. What are you gonna do? So yeah, I wish I could give this a slightly more glowing review. I do think it gets repetitive, but I think a lot of the components to it are really well done, and it is definitely among the better movies that I saw this month.
Okay. All right, so we both saw Man with the Screaming Brain, kind of a sci-fi Channel B movie that Bruce Campbell did. It was a passion project. I've always heard about it, but behind-the-scenes stories always really intrigued me, and we finally saw it for Hijinks, and what'd you think?
I liked it. I mean, I pretty much I think I can pretty much just sum it up with the one sentence of, I think it takes way too long to get to the actual, like, dynamic of Bruce Campbell having someone else inside his head and, and kind of like the comedy that arises from that. Like, it takes way too long to get there. And that stuff is, like, easily the best stuff in the movie, and everything else in the movie is honestly pretty mediocre. But it's pretty fun when it does happen.
Yeah, it's a send up to the over-the-top B movie, and the physical comedy is quite great.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
All right, Halloween Kills. Evil dies tonight. Did you know
not
that?
Really.
Did you know that Evil dies tonight?
Well, apparently not really, because there's a third movie.
Okay, so the one thing that I do find interesting, I think Halloween Kills is an abject failure of a movie. I will say that much. Um, like it's easily the worst of the three David Gordon Green Halloween movies. The one thing that I think Halloween Ends does kind of like retroactively make it thematically a little bit better, because the whole premise of this movie is it's the town turning against Michael Myers. It's the town basically rallying against Michael Myers. Um, which is an interesting concept, and I think what this movie was trying to go for was kind of like, you know, sort of like the fear of the mob mentality, and how the mob mentality and angry mobs could be just as dangerous as Michael Myers. And like I said, I do think that kind of the concept of the dark side of Haddonfield outside of Michael Myers is explored better in Halloween Ends. This, I think they had a decent idea with the mob stuff, but Dragon Evil Dies Tonight has become a meme for a reason, because yeah, goddamn, all this movie is just fucking townspeople going around yelling "Evil dies tonight." It's just, I mean, it's one of the most like repetitive. I don't know. Like, it does have some good atmosphere. It does have some good Michael Myers kills. It does have some good cinematography. I think David Gordon Green actually is really on point with the cinematography in these movies. I think that's probably the best thing he has going for him as a filmmaker, is his cinematography. But yeah, it's definitely the awkward middle chapter in the Halloween saga, and I do think it's a shame that people are shitting all over Halloween Ends, because I think it's a lot better than this one, and Halloween Ends is so much better that it kind of retroactively makes me at least appreciate the themes of this movie a little bit more, if not the film itself.
Okay.
All right.
All right, these two are going to go by real fast here. So
You
I
said
saw.
Halloween Kills is a guilty pleasure for me, to be honest. No, I can totally see that. It does kind of feel like the guilty pleasure movie of the David Gordon Green trilogy, for sure.
And also, Koski mentioned the fun fact with the Andy Kaufman documentary is
Mhm.
the director is the son of the guy who worked on that the Carnegie Hall show.
Oh, interesting.
Nice. Okay, so I saw the Tower of Terror movie. With the Goot.
Yes.
Yeah, so this, of course, is very much kind of the proto attraction based Disney film. Kind of like very safely done, like on the TV, as basically as a TV movie. It was very hard to find, which is why it was the first time watching it. Look. There's an antiquated charm to it, as far as a ghost story goes, which obviously builds to the climax, which is the ride, which is great. Um, the plot, though, not so great. Plot no bueno, with like the lady who conspired to curse this very specific elevator, and not just the like a cursed hotel. Just
Yeah.
kind of the logic Swiss cheese in this movie. Let's be honest, but. I love Q. I love the caretaker as the grandson of the bellhop, which is quite nice. But I mean, ultimately, the movie is kind of lacking the magic and the finesse, like the Twilight Zone element. Even though I'm not saying this movie couldn't have been successful without the Twilight Zone, but let's face it, a big part of the magic of this attraction is the Twilight Zone. So taking that off the table puts it in a space where they got to really try hard on it. And if we throw things like it's a curse, it's going to hurt things. So.
Yeah, like I said, I do think that I'm a bit more forgiving of this movie, just because I think it does a pretty decent job of actually adapting the events that happen in the ride. I like the fact that the climax actually takes place in the elevator. Like, it's a better, like I've said this before, but I think that the first couple Pirates of the Caribbean movies are way better films, but this is probably the best like hard adaptation that they've done, just as far as like actually capturing the spirit of what they're adapting. But yeah, it's not a great movie.
And lastly, Nosferatu.
Nosferatu. God.
Yes, so for the 100th anniversary, we looked at this film, which I'd seen in kind of the sense of like like a film history class of sorts, in which
Sure.
you see some snippets of it, but never really.
You see the two shots. You see the shadow, and then the shot of him in the doorway.
Yeah, Exactly, that's it. So, you know, I was a little let down by this one, if I'm being frank, but I can't really hold that against the movie because, again, it's the early silent era. It's no Caligari. Then again, what can be Caligari? You know, it's just, you know, Orlok looks cool. The big takeaway, Orlok looks cool, but here's the Count Orlok. He looks cool, but ultimately, when you think about it, it's too scary for his own good to be actually a functional vampire. Okay, that's what it is. That's the truth, kids. I don't know what to tell you. All right, he looks cool, but he wouldn't work at all.
Well, like I said, Dragon, my big takeaway rewatching it was the Spanish flu stuff in this movie.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You're right. That's the big takeaway from this movie, is that there's a great logic to kind of like the vampire. So rarely do we talk about the vampirism as like an outbreak, which we do here, which is good and obviously very relevant 100 years later to us.
And I do think that whole section in the movie where he is just like systematically killing off the crew members of his ship.
Yeah.
It is pretty unsettling. That is the part of the movie to me that was genuinely unsettling.
Yep.
Like, it's not outwardly scary, but, you know, it gave me the willies a little bit. You know, it gave me a fun little Halloween chill.
Oh, it gave the boy the willies.
God, all right.
All right, so.
Okay, and finally, best and worst, Dragon. What do you got?
I gotta be honest, Tiki. I haven't really had this.
This was a rough month.
I'm struggling to find good stuff, but I know what it is. So the best one is the Poitier documentary. Sydney was the best thing I saw this month. Like, I mean, here's the thing. Wendell and Wild was good, but I mean, Poitier was like full on fantastic. Where Wendell and Wild against, you know, it's like kind of the social relevancy thing. It's like that, and again the expository stuff. So worst, I'm gonna say. Well, I know what the worst is. Just give me a second here. The worst is. God, sorry. I think it's probably going to be. I can't. I don't want to just say Nosferatu because it isn't bad.
No, don't fucking say.
I know. I'm not. I'm just looking for it. It's a month of mediocre, man. I don't know.
No, it is a month of mediocre. That is a good way to put it.
I mean, I guess I liked Amsterdam, but I didn't love it, so I can't really. I don't have to tell if it's. Let's just say there is no bad. It's just mediocre. All right, I don't know.
That's fair.
What about Tower of Terror? That's what I'm saying. It's either Tower of Terror.
I would accept Tower of Terror as the worst.
I guess Tower of Terror then. It's the worst.
Yeah, let's throw that in. That's fine.
All right, there you go.
Well, it's not Nosferatu. It's not fair to say.
That's the thing. I can't. I don't know. I was let down by it. It's not bad.
Oh, that black and white silent film.
Is it? You call that black and white? Look at all these colors. That ain't black and white. Get that out of here. Bring in young Frankenstein. That's black and white.
All right, for me, I am totally with you. Like, it is a sea of mediocrity this month, unfortunately.
But you actually have a worse movie. Come on.
Yeah, I do. For best, I honestly am halfway tempted to give it to Wendell and Wild just to support the the medium, and I do
co-sign that, honestly. That'd be my runner-up, honestly.
I do really like the look of it, but yeah, like you said, it is. Koski says if you said Nosferatu, the film buff in me would hunt you down. Poor Nosferatu, he should be feared, but SpongeBob ruined the poor guy. I mean, I will argue though, Koski. No kid is ever going to forget the name Nosferatu because of SpongeBob. SpongeBob is going to be a gateway drug for a lot of film historians in the making, I think.
I gotta be honest, I kind of want to see the Friendly Nosferatu movie. I gotta be honest. I would love to see that. I would love to see just like that like a parody take on Nosferatu. Oh, he's actually quite a nice guy.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, for best, I'm gonna go with Triangle of Sadness. It's not perfect. It is a little bloated, and I do think it loses a little bit of steam in the third act. But like I said, goddamn, that vomit scene in the middle is just like Dragon. I know it's ridiculous, but I can't explain it unless you actually see it. The vomit scene in the middle of this movie is high cinema. It is truly one of the most like thrilling pieces of comedy filmmaking I have seen in a long time. It genuinely was like, oh my God, this is awesome. So yeah, I am gonna go Triangle of Sadness. Although I didn't really love it as a whole. It certainly had some of the most memorable stuff of the month for me. And yeah, worst is that fucking Exorcism movie. I mean, I'm not even bothered to. It's the what is it fucking even? It's so forgettable.
Really, more than Morbius?
Pray for the Devil. Oh yeah, Morbius. Like I said, I didn't mind watching Morbius.
But you were delirious, though. That doesn't count.
No, come on. Pray for the Devil. The big thing for me, Dragon, is that it was directed by the guy who did The Last Exorcism, and he just totally dropped the ball. Like, I wasn't expecting anything from Morbius.
The man who birthed the Fabian.
I wasn't expecting anything from Morbius, and I wasn't expecting much from this, but it was just below. All right. Okay, so yeah, big thanks to Koski Productions for being so engaged this whole time. This is a long podcast, and you stuck through it with us, so I really appreciate it. Also, LEB popped in once or twice. That was nice, too. Thanks. Okay, well, folks, we have waxed on long enough, and it's time to put the pen down. Until next time, when we return for another fitting chapter in our Movie Memoirs.
It's not all cancer.